and isolated loss of vulnerable livestock and crops, and that is expected in places over the northern high ground of the Eastern Cape. And then the third one is yellow level 2 warning for damaging winds, resulting in localized damage to settlements and localized power and communication interruptions. And those conditions are expected over the coast and adjacent interior of the Eastern Cape and the extreme eastern parts of the Free State. The rest of your weather looks like this. We start with Pretoria, where the weather is fine, with a minimum of 11 and a maximum of 17. Johannesburg, fine, 6 to 13. Mbombela, partly cloudy at first, otherwise fine, 14 to 22. Polokwane, partly cloudy at first, otherwise fine, 10 to 24. Mahikeng will be partly cloudy and windy, becoming fine in the afternoon, 4 to 13. Bloemfontein will be cloudy and windy with isolated showers, becoming fine by late afternoon, 3 to 12. Kimberley will be partly cloudy and windy with isolated morning showers. It will become fine by late afternoon, 3 to 13. Uppington, partly cloudy and windy, becoming fine by late afternoon, 3 to 12. Cape Town will be cloudy with light rain, clearing from mid-morning, 12 to 14. George, cloudy with isolated showers and rain during the early morning, 9 to 17. Gqeberha, cloudy with scattered showers and rain, 13 to 18. East London will be cloudy with scattered showers and rain, 12 to 19. Durban will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and rain, becoming fine by the afternoon, 12 to 21. Richards Bay will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and rain, becoming fine by the afternoon, 19 to 22. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and rain, becoming fine by the afternoon, 12 to 17.
We're extending the sunshine on Mzansi's favorite adventure SUV with Ford Blue Sky offers. For just $849,999, a new Everest XLT could be yours. Glide through the burbs or power through nature's toughest with a 3.5-ton brake towing capacity. You'll even get 4x4 driver training through Ford Family Promise for free. Head to a Ford dealer and get your new Everest XLT for just $849,999. T&Cs apply.
We all have dreams. Some people dream to be astronauts, while others want to yell, Vimba, as they chase that elusive shoplifter sprinting out and into Diamond Walk. Others might look at a broomstick and think to themselves that witchcraft might be the way to go. The possibilities are endless. But for Hollywood stars Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, their dreams is to make it big in the English football leagues. Tune into Welcome to Wrexham as the duo aim to turn Wrexham AFC into an underdog story that the world can root for, bringing hope and change to the community. Welcome to Wrexham, Saturdays at 3 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
22 minutes after 6, the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Gaza has intensified sharply in recent days as Israel launches a renewed military ground and air offensive that has left hundreds dead and further crippled the already devastated enclave. Amid global outrage and threats of diplomatic fallout, international leaders are urging Israel to halt its campaign and allow critical humanitarian aid to flow. The UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy has been particularly strident in his criticism of Israel's military campaign and rhetoric. Lammy has described comments by Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich as extremism that is dangerous, repellent and monstrous. This is in response to Smotrich's recent comments in which he said victory in Gaza would entail destroying it and displacing Palestinians living there to a humanitarian zone in the south of Gaza and eventually having them leave for other countries. Let's speak to Professor Chris Landsberg, who is Chair of African Diplomacy and Foreign Policy at the University of Johannesburg, also an advisor, a special advisor to Minister Ronald Lamola. Good morning to you and thank you for your time, Prof. So how have the last 11 weeks, that siege, really this near total siege that Israel has laid on Gaza, as well as some of the more extreme rhetoric that we've been hearing from elements within the government of Israel, such as Smotrich, how have they reshaped how the conflict is seen through the eyes of the world?
What has clearly happened is the contradiction that President Trump literally this past week concluded a visit to the Middle East, but also not going to Israel, and in a sense giving Israel almost a sense of a carte blanche, while also upsetting Netanyahu. In fact, the fact that America is talking to Iran, for example, and I just lost you there for a moment. I'm not sure if you made the point that Israel has also overnight threatened to attack Iran's nuclear facilities, a country that doesn't have any weapons. Israel has a grand plan. They seem to be determined to go after the grand plan, but it's clear that Israel is becoming very isolated, and the countries that were very critical of South Africa at first when it stuck out its neck are all coming around now and are starting to threaten with sanctions, and I think it will even go to withholding of military weapons, but certainly not a good theater and specter playing out in the Middle East, and that will come up today in the talks, I suspect.
Yeah, and what have you made of the comments, a joint statement coming through from the UK, the leaders of the UK, France and Canada? Because it's quite strong. I mean, that point you are making about some of the language that South Africa was, first out of the starting blocks in using about violations of international humanitarian law. That's exactly the kind of language that these leaders are using now, but also saying that actually they will not stand by and do nothing. They are prepared to take measures such as sanctions.
That's such a significant point to us, because whereas Britain, France, Germany, the European Union as a bloc and other countries did not prevaricate and were not shy to portray themselves as the coalition of the willing when it comes to Ukraine, it seems that there's now a joint movement on Israel as well. I think that is very, very significant, and it doesn't bode well for President Netanyahu, who seems to, like another international leader, act and react on the basis of personal politics. But I think it's a very significant move, especially if you take into account that if the court finds in South Africa's favor, that there could be consequences for these countries, collateral damage, in that their leaders who helped Israel with weapons at first could themselves be sanctioned and face trial.
Yeah. And then lastly, you alluded to this, Prof, just briefly a few minutes ago. What tone do you believe the recent events on the ground in Gaza and the kind of international pressure that we've been talking about, what tone do you believe it sets for that meeting between President Trump and President Ramaphosa in the White House later on today?
Well, the tone it sets, it puts South Africa in a strong position to, let me first say this. There is an attempt to mute South Africa on Israel. There's an expectation that South Africa is not going to withdraw the case. South Africa has made that absolutely clear. But when I say mute, just go quieter on Israel. You make too much noise for us on Israel and you're getting us into trouble. The strong position it puts South Africa in is that, look, the carnage and the destruction, the mayhem, and frankly the genocide is continuing, and South Africa could appeal to President Trump to use his power and leverage and at the very least ask for a lull in the fighting and for access to aid for the starving Palestinians.
All right. I've got to thank you for your time and your insights. It's good to talk to you after such a long time. That's Professor Chris Landsberg, who is Chair of African Diplomacy and Foreign Policy at the University of Johannesburg.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
A very good morning. Let's kick off with Orlando Pirates bouncing back to winning ways in the Betway Premiership. They claimed a 1-0 victory over SuperSport United at the new Peter Mokaba Stadium last night. As a result, Bucks reduced Mamelodi Sundowns' lead to 14 points in the standings, but the latter have already been crowned champions. Elsewhere, Kevin De Bruyne bid farewell in his final home game as Manchester City eased to a 3-1 win over Bournemouth to close in on a top 5 finish. City manager Pep Guardiola praising De Bruyne, who announced he would be leaving the club. De Bruyne has made over 400 appearances for the Citizens, scoring 108 goals and lifting 14 major trophies during his decade-long stay in Manchester.
I said Messi is the best I ever seen because Messi done it in a really close to the box, but Kevin is there. So it just through the stats, the goals, the assists that he provide to the team in the final third, the talent. Last game, we get 2 or 3 passes again in front of the one play in front of the keeper. That is unique. It's unique. That's why have been one of the best players this club has done in whole history.
In the meantime, Crystal Palace shook off any FA Cup final hangovers to keep their top half hopes alive as Eddie Nketiah netted a double in a 4-2 win over Wolves. Cricket, 14-year-old Vaibhav Suryavanshi impressed again with 57 in Rajasthan Royals' 6-wicket victory over the Chennai Super Kings in the Indian Premier League. And finally, former world number 1 Novak Djokovic says he couldn't get more out of his partnership with Andy Murray, but is in no rush to find a new coach. He parted company with former Wimbledon and US Open winner Murray early in May after 6 months working together. Djokovic claimed a wild card into the Geneva Open tournament before going into the French Open, which starts on Sunday, to try and get his rhythm back on court. We'll be back here on The Morning Brief with more sport. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, the DA says it wants Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to provide a comprehensive spending plan when tabling the national budget for the third time today. The party says the main objectives of a spending review will help in removing excessive and overlapping government expenditure. Eskom says it has sufficient electricity capacity to sustain the grid during the upcoming winter months. The group chief executive says despite the recent implementation of load shedding, the power utility is now in a strong position and is well prepared for the increased demand for electricity. And President Cyril Ramaphosa says he's looking forward to a positive meeting with his US counterpart Donald Trump today. Ramaphosa spoke to the media outside the South African Embassy in Washington. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Looking okay around Pretoria at the moment. If you're inbound, just a little bit of traffic on the N4 after Watermeyer Street through towards the N1. It gets busy. N1 South, if you're looking for updates there. Brockfontein to New Road already pretty heavy. Dipcliffe interchange is open. Normal flows there. And there's quite a big heavy backlog on the R59 this one. If you're coming into Joburg, having left the Vaal from Klip River Drive up to Swart Copies Road, you're stuck in a heavy bind of traffic through there. Wet weather across the Durban region this morning. Take it easy, please. Just a reminder on Fields Hill. Fields Hill always claims some crash victims. In the wet, it becomes very slippery. There is a little bit of traffic just top of Kloof coming onto the hill, so we'll keep an eye on that one for you. But just give yourself extra time to get through the Durban region through the wet weather this morning. Cape Town also some on-off sort of light showers, so roads are still wet and slippery. Not enough rain to wash that grease and grime away, just enough to bring it up to the surface. It's that sort of morning. Lights are out Baden-Powell at Strandfontein Road. It's quite a heavy queue already along that coastal run. From Mitchell's Plain, if you're trying to go through to Musenberg, it's quite heavy. Chapman's Peak Drive remains closed due to current weather conditions. Okarpsevek, the alternative route in the meantime. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The business update on SAFM.
All right, good morning to you. And Dauleng, for the first update of the morning, let's talk the automotive sector at a global and international level. Tell me about General Motors and the decision that they've taken to stop exporting cars from the US to China.
Morning to us. Now, this comes as the group remains concerned about tariffs between the two largest economies, even as a trade truce has been reached between the US and China. General Motors says the truce is temporary and so has announced that it will stop shipping vehicles from the US to China for its export business. This came into effect last week. Now, the move affects the company's Durand Guild Premium import business. According to a company spokesperson, the move is a response to significant changes in economic conditions aimed at restructuring the Durand Guild and optimizing GM China's operations. Now, the decision comes, of course, amid those ongoing discussions between the US and China on tariffs and trade issues prior to the recent 90-day agreement to lower levies. Goods imported into China from the US faced tariffs exceeding 100%. GM not the only company moving to do this. Ford had similarly stopped its exports to China in April, highlighting the challenges faced by US automakers in the Chinese market.
So this is not good news at all, Ndauling. Daybreak, is this the poultry farm in Mpumalanga, in which the PIC has a stake, right?
That's right, Thulas, and they have been placed under business rescue after facing financial difficulties. And one of its biggest shareholders, the PIC, has thrown its support behind the business rescue plan, aiming to preserve the company's value while saving around 3,000 jobs. Now, to stabilize the business, the PIC has injected 74 million rands in working capital and reconstituted the board of directors. Now, the company, established in 2001 and based in Mpumalanga with operations in Gauteng, Limpopo, and KZN, has struggled with financial troubles since 2017. The PIC believes the business rescue is the best way moving forward, allowing for the appointment of a business rescue practitioner to develop a turnaround strategy. Now, Daybreak Foods is part of the PIC's unlisted market investments, which have struggled to deliver good returns. With the recent announcement of Patrick Dlamine's appointment as CEO, he has been tasked with addressing the issues in the unlisted market investments, including what's taking place now at Daybreak Foods.
Yeah, and it's a big day for us in terms of public finances and management thereof. We could finally get a budget. Who knows? Tell me what we are watching on the markets from yesterday, how it closed, and what we're watching today.
We really hope it is the final budget.
Who knows, Ndauling,
Yeah. Even though pretty much half of the cabinet is not there, but we won't speak about that. Looking at what took place on markets here at home, the JSE managing to eke out some gains yesterday. This as we, of course, await the budget to be tabled. With that, we saw the all-share close 0.29% to the good, boosted by 3.5% increase in the financial 15. The local unit, in the meantime, really remains resilient, strengthening even further below the 18 Rand mark at 17.90 to the dollar. Over in the U.S., stocks took a breather yesterday, snapping its 6-day win streak, its longest since a 9-day run that ended earlier this month. Now, the Nasdaq led the losses on that front, closing 0.38% lower. Then over in Asia, stocks trading mostly higher, and this despite slow export numbers from Japan.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ndauling Lechela. She'll be back with more insights for you in the second hour of the show, just after 7:30 here on the Morning Brief.
Africa Update on SAFM.
For that, let's turn to Advocate Sipho Mandula. Raz, good morning. Let's start in Sudan. An update that's coming through from that country's military about their long-going battles with this paramilitary group.
Refreshing morning, Thulas and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. Thulas, indeed, the greater Khartoum is under the control of the Sudanese army now. It is no longer under the Rapid Support Forces. That came from the Sudanese military spokesman, Brigadier General Nabil Abdullah, yesterday, saying that they have captured both the sister cities of Khartoum, Umdurman, you'll recall, and Bahir. They've been under RSF. As we know, this is almost 3 years of this conflict. We are talking of 13 million people who have fled their homes. 4 million they are across the neighboring countries. And as we know, Sudan has been pushed into famine. atrocities in the western part of Sudan, in Darfur. So there's a lot. Even if they've captured the great Khartoum, Thulas, people are still saying that Khartoum now is completely free of rebels. But what is outstanding, Thulas, is that transitional justice system. It is that governance system that must be back in Sudan, in Khartoum.
The ability of the Ugandan military courts to try civilians, non-military personnel, has always been controversial. It was briefly off the table, but I see it's now back.
Indeed, Thulas, it was out of the table, but is back through the bill that civilians can be court-martialed. But the opposition have lamented on this, Thulas, but the military tribunal or courts have been established, particularly for those who are in the service or who are in the force. But now with this new laws coming in, you'll recall that Uganda is going for the elections in 2026. Others are looking at this, that military courts are going to be used to repress those opposition members who are questioning the governance of President Museveni. And that's where this bill, others are saying it is not constitutional. There is a Uganda-based rights group called Chapter 4 that is saying that they will definitely take this matter up with the courts.
Yeah, sure. Can you imagine being tried in a military court? Just being tried in any court is daunting enough. But if you are a civilian appearing in a military court, I think it's a different ball game altogether. This is quite disturbing coming out of Namibia. Why has this British tourist been arrested?
Thulas, remember that you have these tourists who come and will, for me, when I used to stay in Orlando West, Thulas, they'll come out of their bus and take pictures. They don't even ask you your name, Thulas. They don't even ask you about what is the current condition where you stay. Now, Namibia, here is a 65-year-old British tourist who was in a Grashoek Living Museum, taking pictures of the children, Thulas, asking them to can take off their clothes. And that's where the government has arrested him, and he will be tried, Thulas, this week, because this is a serious offense for asking children under the age of 14, Thulas. Sure. Even young girls also. There were 3 boys and 3 girls. There were 3 minor boys, and there were 1 16 teenage girl who was also asked to last. And this issue, it shows of these tourists when they come to Africa that they still think Africa is the zoo place and they can do as they want. But the government of Namibia, Thulas, is taking efforts to prosecute these tourists. A 65-year-old probably was eating his pension, but this time, Thulas, he ate the wrong place.
Seriously disturbing development there. Lastly, Sipho, in your historical archive, let's turn the page to the 21st of May, 1981. What happened?
Thulas is in the African diaspora now, Kingston, Jamaica. It was on this day 44 years ago, Thulas, when Robert Nesta Marley was buried at 9 Mile, the village where he was born. He passed away at the age of 36, Thulas. In his heavy bronze coffin, there was the issue of putting the colors of red, gold, and green. There was a Bible open with Psalm 23 and a stock of ganja placed by her widow, Rita Marley. And this was one of the greatest funerals in the Caribbean in Jamaica, Thulas. It's estimated that more than 100,000 people were out in Kingston, Jamaica to observe the state funeral of Robert Nesta Marley, who passed away in 1981 on the 11th of May, but buried on the 21st of May. Asante sana, Thulas, as was leading the conversation, SAFM observing the Africa Month.
Sipho, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mantula there with your Africa update. Just a flavor and a sample of some of the key stories on the African continent and the African diaspora.
Specsavers Audiology, South Africa's largest audiology group, brings you the all-new Clarity Pro rechargeable hearing aids. Experience cutting-edge features at a price you can afford. For a limited time only, buy one Clarity Pro rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right. Buy one and get 50% off the second. Visit specsavers.co.za to find your nearest store and ask for Clarity Pro today. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
Some crimes fade with time, but the truth, it never stays buried. From the makers of critically acclaimed drama comes Unforgotten Season 3. Detectives Cassie Stewart and Sunny Khan return to unravel another cold case. A missing boy, a hidden body, and secrets that refuse to die. When the past resurfaces, lives will change forever. Unforgotten Season 3, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Because justice has no expiration date.
You know, ever since I adopted positive energy-saving behaviors, the National Grid is thanking me. You should also adopt this lifestyle and your pocket will thank you too. Simply switch off non-essential appliances and lights when they're not in use. Reduce your geyser temperature to 60 degrees Celsius. Replace inefficient lights with LED lights. These are some of the ways you can use electricity wisely to help sustain our energy grid and contribute to a greener planet. Just like every rand counts, every kilowatt counts. Let's use electricity wisely. Eskom.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
Let's turn our attention to this story now. Government has launched a nationwide initiative to collect detailed data on foreign nationals working in the public sector, citing national security and improved governance as key motivations. The initiative seeks to address public concerns over undocumented workers, particularly in sensitive sectors such as healthcare. Let's speak to Philani Mueli, who is the Director of Employment Management at the Department of Public Service and Administration. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. So what is the information gap that you are seeking to fill with this initiative, this collection of detailed data on the employment of foreign nationals in the civil service?
Good morning to Thulasizwe and the listeners. Thanks for the opportunity. As DPSA, we want to ensure that the data on the employed foreign national by government is accurate in relation to their ranks and sector and the posts where these people are employed. And we also seek to find details in terms of their citizenship status, whether how many those with permanent residence and those who with work visas. So that is information that we want to get as government, because at the moment, if we draw our report from PESAL does not give us that classification of information. Basically, we want more details in terms of citizenship and the occupations, those people that are occupying.
Does this suggest that you don't have confidence in the data that was the basis, for instance, recently of your presentation to Parliament, in which you told Parliament that there were 5,779 foreign nationals employed in the civil service?
In terms of numbers, we do have confidence, but in terms of details, as I'm saying, we need to have a clear data in terms of identification or classification of information, whether how many of those with permanent residence, how many of those with work visas, because you will understand that in public service or in South Africa, people with a permanent residence enjoy same rights as the citizen in terms of competing for employment in South Africa. But we wanted to be clear and be sure that in terms of those that we are terming foreign nationals, how many with work visas, how many with permanent residence. Because you might find that out of that 5,800, close to approximately 6,000 foreign nationals, most of them are having permanent residence, of which a government of South Africa and laws of South Africa does allow the government to employ foreign nationals with permanent residence to enjoy employment opportunity in South Africa that are equal to those of South Africans.
And again, I have to ask then, the fact that you're even posing that question suggests that, at least to me, it suggests that you're no longer confident. You can no longer state confidently that only foreign nationals who are permanent residents, so holders of permanent residency, as opposed to, you keep referring to people with work visas, which I imagine would be excluded from employment in the civil service. It suggests to me that you're no longer confident that that remains the case. And I would say to you then that would be in violation of the one section of the Public Service Act, which specifically says that employment in the civil service is preserved for South African citizens or holders of permanent residency.
in terms of the laws, the Public Service Act does specify that. However, if there is a critical skill that is needed in South Africa, the South African government has a policy and applies the rules that are linked to the Immigration Act, which allows people to be issued with work visas. South African government does appoint people with work visas on critical skills occupations. Only on contract basis, they cannot be employed permanently. I think the Act is very clear in terms of the nature of appointment of those people, that they cannot be appointed permanently, but they can be appointed on contract if maybe those people are issued with valid work visas.
And you recently also released the top 10 government departments in which foreign nationals are employed in one capacity or another. And I'm interested, I see that there's a lot of educator-related posts. I think that's the leading number that you gave, medical-related posts, and then middle management. Are you confident that all of these relate to either, people with permanent residency for whom I imagine there's no bar, they can occupy any position in the civil service, but for those who don't have permanent residency, are you confident that this relates to, rare skills in our economy?
I would say that is the reason we are now collecting data from the departments. We want to do that analysis. That is exactly what we want to establish as DPSA, so that we will then request those departments through their executive authority to give details in terms of how those people were appointed in such positions if they are not in critical list and they are not having permanent residence. Because we understand that it's only permanent residents who can be allowed to compete for such position. If a permanent resident holder occupies such position, then the department must then account in terms of how did they come to a conclusion that they appoint such a person in such a position. And we will also look at the term of the contract, how long has been that person appointed by the institution or by the department.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That is Philani Mweli. He's Director of Employment Management at the Department of Public Service and Administration.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Here's a big one. If you're coming in off the Vaal, driving up to Joburg, a really heavy backlog on the R59. Traffic now queuing back through Klip River Drive on your way up towards Swartkoppies Road. So if you're in from the Vaal, you might want to exit a little bit further south, or certainly come off at Klip River Drive and hit some alternative routes through that area, rather than just sitting in very heavy backlogs through to the incident up by Swartkoppies Road. Breakdown M1 South at New Road this morning, so slow coming through from the old Joburg Road exit, and a lot of traffic on the run down Stibiko Jan Haynes through Gazina if you're Pretoria bound. Here's a big issue in Durban. A tanker has come, I think, off the eastbound carriageway of the M7 and gone onto the westbound track just by Belleville Road. So there's some very heavy backlogging going on the M7 between the N2 and North Dean, both directions, whether you're Pinetown bound or whether you're Bluff bound this morning. So the M7, that is under pressure. At the same time, there's a multi-vehicle pile-up on the N2 North just after Spaghetti Junction. Traffic queuing from the M7. That's very heavy this morning up through Spaghetti Junction on your way to that crash towards Mgina Road. And a collision on the Higginson Highway at the N2 bridge. That's why the run out of Chatsworth is super heavily backed up as well. It is raining across Durban. We are starting to see the collisions come in thick and fast this morning. Cape Town, a little bit of rain still about. There's a few spits and spots. There's a couple of crash scenes on the M3 going south. Weinberg Hill territory down towards Constantia. So that's slow, but it'll also have an impact on the northbound side, which is backed up heavily from Constantia right through into that sort of Newlands area this morning. And the R300 was heavy yesterday. It is starting to build again this morning, slow from Stellenbosch Arterial up towards the Van Riebeek Road off-ramp. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
He's short, loud, and definitely not a licensed therapist, but he's asking the hard questions. It's Heart to Heart with Kevin, the only talk show where the guests spill the tea and Kevin spills the jokes. Real talk, real laughs, and real short host. Heart to Heart with Kevin, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on S3.
TUT ladies are on a humongous mission to play their hearts out. But Masandawana ladies believe they are unstoppable. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Do not miss out on the glittering action of Mzansi's women's football. TUT Ladies FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns Ladies FC on Sunday 25 May at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC One and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
It's coming up to 6 minutes to 7. The Minister of Employment and Labour, Nomakhosazana Meth, has formally launched a 381 million rand relief initiative to support the struggling South African Post Office, aiming to preserve 6,000 jobs and stabilize the state-owned entity through a 6-month funding injection via the Unemployment Insurance Fund's Temporary Employer-Employee Relief Scheme, known as TERS. Let's speak to Thobeka Makai, who is the ministry spokesperson for the Ministry of Employment and Labour. Good morning to you, Thobeka, and thank you for your time. Tell me what the aim and objective is of this intervention and how it will all work.
Good morning to you, Thulasizwe. Thank you for having us, and good morning to the listeners of the show. The funding is aimed at providing assistance, in fact support to the employees for the payment of their salaries and benefits, while the post office implements a very, a turnaround strategy within these 6 months. So the minister is very thrilled that during this time of Workers' Month, she's been able to secure the strategic partnership and safeguard the South African Post Office.
So 381 million rand, does it go straight to supporting salaries? Is there something that the employees will need to do, or will it just work through the normal systems of the post office?
Yes, so what happens is that maybe if I can just take you through the process. The post office made an application to the UIF TERS, and the adjudication committee evaluated their application and saw it fit to give them strictly 6 months. They're a very strict committee, mind you. They are not influenced by anybody. They looked at their application and said, okay, we'll give you 6 months. And within the 6 months, you must turn the situation around. In the interim, this is the amount that you are eligible for. And the amount was 381 million rand. And a specific bank account is opened, and it will be monitored, and it's strictly for paying salaries of the employees, so to safeguard those jobs, so that there is no threat of anyone, getting retrenched in the interim while the turnaround strategy is being implemented.
So I'm just wondering, between the two entities, the two organs of state, being the department and the South African Post Office, is there a sense of what milestones you'll be looking out for? I see that you've set it for 6 months to ensure that salaries are paid and there are no retrenchments in the interim. But are there certain milestones that you'll be looking out for that say that turnaround strategy is being implemented? I know that the post office doesn't reside within your portfolio, but I imagine that there must have been those levels of conversation.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. As a condition for the funding, the post office is actually required to submit regular reports and maintain transparent accounting records and implement a detailed turnaround strategy. So on a month-to-month basis, they will be monitored. They are required to submit reports. There will be strict governance and auditing of the work that they are doing within these 6 months. And there are compliance measures that are in place that they need to meet.
When does this system kick into effect?
Well, it kicks in immediately on approval. They have signed the MOU, hence we have made the announcement. So it kicks in immediately when all parties have signed and have agreed.
All right. I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That's Thobeka Makai, who is spokesperson for the Ministry of Employment and Labour.
Call Thulasizwe now.
086 000 2032.
Yeah, let's get your immediate reaction then to that conversation I just had with Thobeka about the situation at the South African Post Office. The tricky part is that the Post Office doesn't really form part of the entities of the Department of Employment and Labour, but this is a memorandum of understanding between the two entities, the department and the Post Office. Let's hear what one or two people have had to say about that.
Chris and Kambata. The waste of money in the post office is just another wasteful expenditure that government likes to do. Look at post offices internationally. They've closed business. What you need to do is to rethink and repurpose post offices, because postal services, by their nature, have now been taken over by privately owned businesses, and very few people are posting it anyway. Why do we have to waste so much money? We can use it in better places. For an example, putting up an internet cafe that can help you.
No, thanks for that, Chris. It sounds like you are on the road this morning. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the conversation about repurposing and rechanneling the post office has been ongoing for a long time. The other time I was at I think it's one of these outlets where you can do printing and the likes. And they were doing you can submit your fingerprints when you need to have a police clearance where your criminal record needs to be checked. I started thinking to myself, these people are eating the South African Post Office's lunch. This is an initiative that the Post Office could have initiated long ago and could have been ahead of the curve in introducing some of these initiatives. So you're absolutely right that rethinking what the Post Office is, the Post Office in 2025 is not the same post office that it was in 1982 or something, when all of us would wait for the letter in the post, registered mail, etc., etc. So that inability to be ahead of the curve and innovate, a lot of commentators have said, has led to this situation. I mean, with over 360 branches having closed in the last while and losses of about 2.1 billion rand that were reported, almost 2.2 that were reported in the past year. Anyway, let's leave it there. I'll make more time to have more of these conversations with you throughout the show. But for now, Ann Musa is on standby with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, DA's expectations ahead of today's budget speech and Eskom confident of meeting winter peak demands. Good morning. The DA says it wants Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to provide a comprehensive spending plan when tabling the national budget for the third time today. The party says the main objectives of a spending review will help in removing excessive and overlapping government expenditure. Party MP Dr. Mark Burke.
We're expecting the Minister to speak to a comprehensive spending review to be conducted by this government and the findings from that spending review to be implemented in the form of an omnibus bill that takes away areas of excessive spending and overlapping government departments that do the same work to a suboptimal standard. If we can get this right, we will create space in the fiscus, meaning the money at our disposal, to focus on the projects that we need. And while we're doing all of this, the DA is not expecting to see a cutback in frontline services such as doctors, nurses, teachers, and policemen.
Eskom says it has sufficient electricity capacity to sustain the grid during the upcoming winter months. Eskom's Group Chief Executive Den Marukani says despite the recent implementation of load shedding, the power utility is now in a strong position and is well prepared for the increased demand for electricity. He presented Eskom's State of South Africa's Electricity System address in Cape Town yesterday.
We'll go comfortably to about 46 gigawatts of installed capacity. Availability is hover between 60-65. So you're not really having a maximum utilization of your installed capacity. What is key is for us to be able to meet our peak demands in the middle of winter, which tend to shoot up to 33.5, 34 gigawatts of capacity. And we use all our technologies available, including using our picking stations, the diesel consumption stations, for that hour in the evening or two when we need to respond to it.
Several organizations, including Section 27, Blind South Africa and Information Association of South Africa, are expected to make submissions in the Constitutional Court today, asking for the Copyright Amendment Bill to be passed and declared constitutional. This after President Cyril Ramaphosa sent the amended bill back to the Apex Court, arguing parts of the amendments are unconstitutional. Among other arguments to be made in court is for the ability for educational material to be copied and reproduced for non-commercial use instead for research and education purposes. Candidate attorney at Section 27, Fatima Lahe, says they want schools to be able to reproduce educational material without the need to contact the copyright holder.
Section 27 has a particular interest in the CAB as it relates to access to educational materials for the learners, especially those who are blind or visually impaired. As Section 27, we welcome the opportunity to participate in this matter and to highlight those provisions of the CAB that will allow equal access to educational materials and advance the right to freedom of expression and the right to participate in the cultural life of one's choice.
The Public Servants Association, PSA, says deteriorating working conditions, poor infrastructure and governance at Prince Mshiyeni Memorial Hospital in Umlazi, south of Durban, are an indication that government is far from achieving universal health coverage. The union, which represents healthcare professionals across the province, held a picket outside the hospital following the death of medical intern Dr. Aluluto Mazwi last week. It's alleged Mazwi was denied sick leave by a supervisor who has since been placed on precautionary suspension pending an investigation by the department. PSA Provincial Manager Mlungisi Ndlovu.
So as PSA in the province, we are concerned that Department of Health is expected to roll out the NHI. With these conditions that we have at Prince Mshiyeni and all other hospitals, we really don't believe that they are ready to be able to implement. They must fix the infrastructure, ensure that the manpower is there for them to be able to ensure the universal access in terms of the healthcare in our province and also in the country.
And finally, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he is looking forward to a positive meeting with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump today. Ramaphosa spoke to the media outside the South African embassy in Washington. The talks between the two countries are expected to discuss issues including trade, tariffs, as well as the contentious matter of the so-called Afrikaner refugees that have moved to the U.S., claiming to be targeted by unfair and racist laws in South Africa. Ramaphosa said he's expecting a good outcome.
We are hoping to have really good discussions with President Trump and his fellow government colleagues. I'm looking forward to a really good and positive meeting, and we're looking forward to a really good outcome for our country, for our people, for the jobs in our country, and good trade relations, and to normalize relations.
Recapping the top story, the DA says it wants Finance Minister Ino Godongwana to provide a comprehensive spending plan when tabling the national budget for the third time today. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
You won't hear this in the news headlines, but it's definitely worth talking about. Lorette, a 61-year-old woman, is a real Outsurance client who switched and now saves a newsworthy 725 Rand a month on her 2024 BMW X1. That's 725 Rand more money in her pocket every month. Why pay more when you could pay less? Get a quote from Outsurance today and see how much they could save you on your car insurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP, T's and C's online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, the SAFA president, Danny Jordan, playing it cool on Amajita's payday, but promises full support for the World Cup prep. And there's major changes for Sunday's Monaco Grand Prix. Details just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, still very heavy on the R59. If you're driving into Joburg from the Vala, backlog now beyond Clip River Drive and a queue right the way through to Swartkop. It's about 20 minutes to work through that one this morning. Traffic lights down in Gazina, which means Johan Haynes coming off Steve Biko. Very heavy backlogs on your way into Pretoria Central this morning. Durban under pressure with collisions in the Ray. Tanker skidding off the M7 near Belleville Road. That's heavy both ways, whether you're Bluff bound or Pinetown bound. Big multi-vehicle pile-up on the N2 North at Westwood Mall. That's a queue that extends back to Cement Factory. That's heavy this morning. Collision coming out of Chatsworth on the Higginson Highway at the N2. That's very heavy, leaving the Chatsworth area. And there's just been a crash on the M4 southbound near Riverside Road, just around Blue Lagoon. So from Umhlanga side, extra delays along the Ruth First as you line up in towards Durban today. Cape Town, collision on the M3 going south between Wynberg Hill and Constantia. There is some queuing pressure into that. You may be taken off the M3 and routed onto some local routes around the top of Wynberg Hill. Northbound under some pressure this morning. Extra pressure coming up from Constantia due to the onlooking factor. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 7 on this Wednesday. It's great to be in your company. We're into the third hour of the second hour. What's the rush? Thulasizwe, slow down. We're into the second hour of the Morning Brief. The big focus, of course, is on the budget 3.0, they're calling it. Budget 3.0 could third time be the charm for the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. As I said earlier on, this year's budgetary process has been nothing short of a fiasco. Having tried twice, on the 19th of February, remember, we were meant to have a budget delivered, and to say 11th hour is really an understatement. It was at the point at which the budget speech was meant to be starting that we were told that actually it's now been postponed amid that disagreement on VAT. Then on the 12th of March, we had a budget delivered, but that's really not gone nowhere because many of the instruments that make up the whole package that you and I know as the budget had to be withdrawn. So this is the third attempt then by the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, and that's coming up at 2 p.m. In the next few minutes, I'm in conversation with Professor Yanni Rousseau, and we'll get his insights on what is likely to come out of that budget speech by the Finance Minister. And then immediately after that, we talk diplomacy and this big reset of the relationship between South Africa and the United States that President Cyril Ramaphosa has been punting ahead of his meeting with the U.S. President Donald Trump. So much is expected of that. What will actually come out? What does a reset look like? How do you even begin? Do you start by ironing out the differences and misunderstandings of the last few months before getting to the real business of what trade will then look like going forward? So that conversation coming up with Ambassador Welile Nhlapo in the next few minutes. And then a bit later on, that story we've been telling you about, the sanitation crisis in Emfuleni. The government of Gauteng facing a bit of criticism for withdrawing from the sanitation support program in the Emfuleni local municipality in Gauteng. Emfuleni, I don't know, there's nothing much I can add. If you listen to this show, you will know about how I've reflected on how I was a junior journalist, a young man with long hair and dreadlocks when I first reported on Emfuleni. Today, I'm balding and I'm graying, and the situation continues to be the same. So Tasnim Motara will come through and speak to me. That is the MEC of Human Settlements a bit later on in the show in this hour. Through it all, please give me a call and weigh in on these and other conversations. The number is 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
So let's go straight then to that story. The Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, set to deliver the country's long-delayed Budget 3.0, with the VAT dispute finally settled, it would seem, and attention now shifting to how national funds will be allocated amid rising demands, especially from struggling provinces, traditional authorities, and public sector stakeholders. The speech comes as the country faces mounting fiscal pressure, a widening deficit, and limited room for new taxes. So let's speak to Professor Yanni Rousseau from the Wits Business School. He's an economist. And good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for your time. So when the 12th of March budget was approved and subsequently revoked, there was a promise to scrounge around by all and sundry and see where additional revenue may be found. Is there a sense on your side that that exercise has been successful, or it has been unsuccessful, and therefore what we face, the choices we face, may be even more stark than we initially envisaged?
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners. Well, in short, the only way to get more revenue is through higher taxes or better tax collection by SARS, or through much more rapid economic growth that will grow the tax base and therefore bring more revenue to the government. And I am in favour of the last option. Put a clear plan on the table on how the economy can grow faster that will bring more revenue and incidentally help us with the serious unemployment problem we see in South Africa.
So while you're doing that, Prof, putting in place measures to stimulate and ensure that the economy grows and enlarges the tax base and therefore even the efficiency of collection, what do you do in the interim? How do you fund some of those projects? For instance, the 12 March budget included a few interventions that were meant to do exactly that, stimulate the economy. That talk of a 1 trillion rand expenditure on infrastructure. How do you fund it in the immediate?
Well, in interim, you will have to spend less money. It's like any household. In my household, if my income declines, or if I have less income than what I budgeted for, I have to cut my expenditure. So the same principle applies to the fiscal position of the government. Now I can think of a number of places where this government can cut expenditure without making any difference to service delivery to ordinary South Africans. So for one, get rid of 43 deputy ministers. I have no idea why South Africa needs 43 deputy ministers. Nobody has ever been able to explain to me what the job of a deputy minister is. They cannot even deputize for a minister.
Yeah. And then in terms of where you do those cuts, you mentioned the size of the executive, but other service areas, the so-called frontline service areas, how do you spare them from, because I don't imagine that you would do cuts in one area. You would need to do hairline cuts in various areas. Is that even possible, given the conversations we've been having about how the austerity of the last few years has pretty much decimated quite a lot of these services, such as in the healthcare systems and in education?
Well, in my view, we have too much bureaucracy in South Africa, and if we can get rid of some of the bureaucracy, the cost of doing business will be cheaper, and it will reduce the cost of such bureaucracy to taxpayers who pay for that bureaucracy through the fiscus in the first instance. So we will have to look at certain government departments that we can simply close, like the Department for Small Business Development that's not developed business in South Africa. We should simply close, in my view. Likewise, when we talk about education, yes, of course, we need more teachers in schools, but do we really need these very big provincial education departments to administer schools? Do we really need all these officials in the education departments? or do we need more teachers at school? We will have to start making these hard choices to move South Africa forward.
And then lastly, Prof, in terms of what additional revenue can be raised, where do we look for that in terms of, the tax options that are on the table, personal income tax, the various levies, as well as, some of the credits that are sometimes given in areas like medical aid, as well as sin taxes. Is there still room to maneuver around any of these tax measures?
In my view, we don't have room to maneuver. We already have many wealth taxes, for instance, like capital gains tax, dividend withholding tax, and the likes. When we talk about sin taxes, the problem is if you raise them any further, the illegal trade in cigarettes and in liquor will increase to the extent that we might raise less revenue from higher taxes rather than more revenue. So the problem is South Africa has reached the upper limit of the tax burden this economy can carry, also because we don't have economic growth. For the lack of economic growth, we can only blame the ANC and the Ramaphosa administration for low economic growth for the last decade.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That's Professor Yanni Rousseau, who is an economist at the Wits Business School.
Do you want to study towards a tertiary qualification but need a flexible study schedule? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning qualifications offer just that. Our distance learning support is designed for your success. 2025 applications to Stadio's range of high-quality, affordable qualifications are now open. Distance learning qualifications are available in law, administration and management, commerce, teacher education, policing, law enforcement, humanities, and information technology. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
Hey Feel Good fam, we've got a new WhatsApp number. You know we love hearing from you, so save this: 063-036-9649. Send us your shout-outs, voice notes, or just check in like you always do. Same good vibes, just a fresh new line. That's 063-036-9649. Let's feel good together, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. on S3.
The Red Devils want to wrap up the season with maximum points at Old Trafford.
Into the box, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And Mason Mount strikes again. Brilliant stuff from Manchester United.
While the Villains want to conclude their good race with a victory.
Rodgers turns and sees a knee ball into an Ollie Watkins, and he's touched it home. Ollie Watkins breaks the record. Number 75 for Watkins.
This is the bottom half versus top half Premier League clash. Catch Manchester United FC versus Aston Villa FC on Sunday 25 May at 4:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Yeah, we're just battling a little bit to line up our next guest, Ambassador Welile Nhlapo, Senior Political Advisor, who's got a wealth of experience, really. So we'll see what we can do and see if we'll be able to line up that conversation for you. And this has to do with President Cyril Ramaphosa in Washington. As I speak, I'm watching on SABC News a clip from yesterday setting the tone of what the conversation is likely going to look like between him and U.S. President Donald Trump. President Ramaphosa saying, worry not, we're going to have a good meeting. So that was sort of setting the scene for the meeting that will take place a bit later on today. So let's hear what you think about how the meeting will unfold. One or two of your voice notes.
Morning, Thulasizwe. Let me weigh in on the budget. You see, this is the highest degree of inefficiency in terms of how the 2025 budget was handled. But it is what it is. This is what you get when you are led by pensioners. The efficiency will not be there. Those guys must, when we go to pension at 60, 65, they must also retire. Allow young people to lead. And research is demonstrating that a combination of young people and fairly equally older leaders with experience will result in good leadership. So now, over 65, You are leading us. That's why you get all these things. Thank you, Tulas.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for that. And I'm wondering, I hear what you're saying about the balance, youth, the energy of youth, as well as the wisdom of the those who've gone before. I don't know, the more mature group, that nice balance and mix in terms of leadership. So I think the point I take from what you're saying is innovation, that there could have been better innovation around these problems with the budget had that been achieved, that balance had it been achieved.
Morning, Thulasizwe. I agree with those that are saying Godongwana must be fired because he has wasted the government resources, because in the first place, he was supposed to present the budget in that first attempt so that if there are changes, then we could have at least in the second presentation of the budget agree on something. Now we are on the third leg of the budget. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you for making that point. You're not the first person to make that call for the head of the finance minister for him to basically be sacked. I've heard quite a few of those calls, particularly from the opposition in Parliament. One thing I'm wondering about, though, is in terms of the rules that kick in when there's been no agreement and passage of a budget in Parliament. I remember reading those some time ago, and I think one of the provisions is for departments to continue to spend based on last year's budgets, but I think that's limited to a certain percentage that they can do that. I don't know, for me, it feels like this time we have to get it right. This time we just have to get it right because, you know, it's been, the financial year started when? Beginning of April. And we can't keep kicking this can down the road. At some point, all of these systems that fund how our government functions will have to start kicking in. We can't speak of a government shutdown as they do in the United States, but certainly I do feel that unless we get a budget passed soon, we may start running into some serious problems. Let's speak to Janusz in Cape Town. Good morning to you. You want to talk about the meeting with the U.S. President, Donald Trump?
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Tulani. First of all, you mentioned about your first job as a reporter. I saw your picture. You're a very funny guy. You know, you are in the top jacket, tie, and then you got a shorts and socks.
That's my most famous picture, Janusz, and there's a whole backstory to it. I was in Zimbabwe covering a coup that we were not meant to call a coup, but a coup is exactly what it was. And I was just goofing around, and I decided, let me do this, and it has trended more than any other picture I've ever taken. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. So I hope that this meeting will be very, very, very positive for all of us. It cannot be a business as usual. And I hope that the Democratic leader will take this stance and mention about it. I think Trump knows about what happened here and the division of colors and BE and other stuff. So I hope that we're going to have a serious discussion about it, and there must be some positive results for all of us, because we cannot be another 30 years of blaming some people with a specific color for the failure of the ANC. It cannot be like that, for instance, next time the colored people are going to be blamed. Already, many of them, I spoke to them, they are not promoted the same way as blacks, you know, but then after that, they're going to be blacks blaming from the homelands because they had a better life than other blacks. So ANC should stop blaming others. They should look at their own function and actually improve the situation.
Yeah.
By the way, I asked you about the possibility of talking about this, my project, which I mentioned,
Yes.
the Build a College.
Yes, I remember. I remember that conversation. We'll pick it up at some other point, Janusz. But I'm just wondering about the ANC blaming the past, etc., and blaming the ANC. To what extent will it continue to be the blame laid on the ANC when, in reality and in fact, right now, the ANC is not governing alone? So I know about the past failures of the ANC. Let's talk now going forward. In 10 years' time, will we be having the same conversation, saying the ANC failed? When do we hold all the other political parties that are part of the government right now responsible?
And also, does it mean that if all whites will be forced to leave, that will be the point when there will be employment for everybody?
That will never happen, Janusz. We will never.
I hope so not, because I don't want to.
No. I'm not hoping. I'm telling you that will never happen. At the point at which we had a choice to make about how we were going to do this transition, the critical mass of South Africans made the decision that no one was going to be chased away from this country. We were going to stay and make this country work. But thank you for that.
Right.
I've engaged you this morning. Thank you. That's Janusz in Cape Town. Nhlanhla, my brother, I do believe that, I won't have enough time. I won't do justice to our conversation. If you don't mind, can I call you back? I just need to go to Zai very quickly.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you, Zai. So in the wake of the Amajita victory and them being welcomed at the airport, we've been hearing from the SAFA president, Danny Jordaan.
I know.
Haven't heard from him in a while.
He's resurfaced.
What's he saying?
Well, there's 3.6 million rand in the bag, and the players are going to need a calculator to figure out what their share is, because the SAFA president is being very coy. He did praise Amajita, though, for making South African football history, lifting the under-20 AFCON title. He also made a call to PSL clubs to release young players for national duty, hinting that the World Cup stage is the perfect place to shine.
This under-20 team, together with the players who are not playing, and we hope that we'll have the full cooperation of our clubs. And if we give the coach all of the possibilities in terms of player availability, including those who play in Europe, Shande Campbell, and Bokasi, and Mapena, that we know we'll have a team that can compete with the best in the world. And we look forward to Chile and the World Cup.
Soccer action, Orlando Pirates bouncing back to winning ways in the Betway Premiership. They claimed a 1-0 victory over SuperSport United at the new Peter Mokaba Stadium. As a result, Bucks reducing Mamelodi Sundowns' lead to 14 points in the standings, but the latter have already been crowned champions. Elsewhere, Kevin De Bruyne bid farewell in his final home game as Manchester City eased to a 3-1 win over Bournemouth to close in on a top 5 finish. Crystal Palace, they shook off any FA Cup final hangover winnings to, beat Wolves 4-2, and Ruben Amorim insisting that Europa League glory won't mask the problems his Manchester United side have faced all season. United face fellow league strugglers Tottenham tonight 9 p.m. as both teams look to put their domestic woes to the side.
But we already know the problems. There's a lot of things that we need to change in our club, the way we do everything during the week in Carrington, the recruitment, the academy. I think we need to improve. So it's hard to point one thing, and that will not be solved by winning a cup. So I think I will say it again. For me, we have bigger things to deal with to put this club back to the top.
And finally, this Sunday's Monaco Grand Prix promises more than glitz and gridlock. The FIA has rolled out major rule changes aimed at turning this street parade into a strategic showdown. For the first time, drivers must make 2 pit stops using at least 2 different tyre compounds, regardless of weather, and sections of the circuit have also been resurfaced to improve grip and safety, as well as tighter curfew rules are in place due to Monaco's famously compact layout. The DRS zone remains unchanged, but track limits will be enforced more strictly around turns 10 and 11. We'll turn back with more sport. Top of the hour, I am Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, analysts expect that the national budget will be passed following significant consultations among parties within the Government of National Unity. Finance Minister Ino Godongwana will today make his 3rd attempt at tabling the budget. Eskom says it has sufficient electricity capacity to sustain the grid during the upcoming winter months. The group chief executive says despite the recent implementation of load shedding, the power utility is now in a strong position and is well prepared for the increased demand for electricity. And President Cyril Ramaphosa says trade relations will be high on the agenda when he meets U.S. President Donald Trump today. Trump imposed high tariffs to several countries, including South Africa, when he returned to office earlier this year. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Story busy coming into Joburg on the R59. If you've left the Vale, it's about a 20-minute delay between Clipper River Drive and Swartkoppes Road. That's on the R59 going north. Traffic lights down at Gazina, causing delays on Johan Haynes as you come off Steve Biko into central Pretoria. Paul Kruger through Capital Park looking busy, and Eskia and Pathlali into Marabastad heavy as well. So your three big routes coming in from the northern parts of Pretoria, all very slow. Durban, a big tanker crash on the M7 out by Belleville Road in the Queensborough area. Very heavy, both Pinetown bound and Bluff bound along the M7. Expect to hit some queues there today. N2 north from the cement factory up through towards Mgeni Road is heavy roadworks plus an earlier collision. And Cape Town, a couple of crash scenes on the M3 going south between Wynberg Hill and Constantia. You may find yourself being taken off at the bottom of Wynberg Hill or top of Wynberg Hill and just rerouted along an alternative route to rejoin the N3 back at Constantia. So some really heavy delays and a bit of a problem northbound with onlookers as well. Marine Drive heavy this morning, Sunningdale to Sunset Beach, Milnerton to Pardon Island. Two queues to work through. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The business update on SAFM.
For the second update of the morning, let's turn to Ndawling Lechela. Ndawling, in company news, tell me about Sasol unveiling a turnaround, their turnaround plans.
That's right, Tula. So Sasol announcing some changes and efforts that it says will help it reduce its debt. At the group's Capital Markets Day, CEO Simon Baloyi said Sasol will be cutting its emissions budget exceeding 70% or about 18 billion rands. Now, the funds saved will be directed towards paying down Sasol's debt. Despite the reduced emissions budget, Sasol remains committed to its target of reducing global greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030. In the meantime, Sasol has set a net debt target of sustainably below $3 billion as a prerequisite for reinstating its dividends. The company expects to resume dividend payments within the next 2 years, contingent on meeting this debt target. In addition, Sasol is also making efforts to turn things around at its chemicals unit, Lake Charles. And once things are sorted, Baloyi said the group will then explore options such as listing that unit. The market reaction to Sasol's plans was positive, with shares surging about 12% at one point yesterday. This marked the largest one-day gain in about a year. Shares, however, closed 8.9% higher.
Tell me about Renergen and this buyout offer that they've received.
Yeah. So big news from the natural gas and helium producer Renergen. The group has entered a buyout deal with US-based ASP Isotopes. The agreement, subject to regulatory approvals and conditions, are set to be met by the end of September and would see ASP acquire 100% of Renergen's ordinary shares. Now, Renergen's CEO, Stefano Marani, seems excited about the merger, citing the potential for unlocking much-needed capital for the company's flagship Virginia gas project in the Free State. He noted that partnering with a U.S. investor base familiar with critical minerals and oil and gas would facilitate the project's growth and expansion. Now, the deal would also allow Renergen to expand its business across key helium customer bases, including nuclear, healthcare, and semiconductor sectors. While ASP is U.S.-based, company CEO Paul Mann says its roots are in South Africa, with 97% of its employees and all operating assets being located in the country. The group recently listed on the group is currently listed on the US NASDAQ and recently announced its intention to list on the JSE. The deal values the company at 1.9 billion rands, with ASP offering Renergen shareholders shares in exchange for their stakes. Markets also liking this move, with Renergen shares up 38% in yesterday's session.
And how are we looking at this hour in terms of the markets that we are watching?
Kicking things off in Asia, markets trending higher. The Japanese Nikkei, however, backing the trend and trading in the red, down 0.33%. This, of course, as exports slowed in Tokyo. In Wall Street, futures in negative territory. Traders on that front taking a breather, enjoying some profit taking. And then coming back home, stocks mostly in the green, the All-Share gaining about a third in yesterday's session. And the Rand charging ahead, sitting at its best level this year. It's at 17.89 to the dollar this hour.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauleng Lechela. She'll be back just after 8:30, and among what she will do in that update, she'll also give you a sense of how the day is likely to pan out on this big day, of course, ahead of the delivery of the budget speech by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana.
It was fast, easy, and he gave me the best quote. My savings is 644 Rand. Come join our insurance and save some money.
Nice one, Lebo. Saving 644 Rand a month on your 2019 Mazda CX-3 would also make you so happy you might drop a beat. Outsurance clients know what it feels like to be on the winning side. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Switch and save today. Outsurance is always looking for ways to save you money. They are also committed to settling valid claims fairly and quickly, no hassles.
You know your claim is going to be taken care of and you've got support along the journey.
SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Some crimes fade with time, but the truth, it never stays buried. From the makers of critically acclaimed drama comes Unforgotten Season 3. Detectives Cassie Stewart and Sunny Khan return to unravel another cold case. A missing boy, a hidden body, and secrets that refuse to die. When the past resurfaces, lives will change forever. Unforgotten Season 3, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Because justice has no expiration date.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
19 minutes to 8. Let's turn to the story. A bit earlier on, I told you about the meeting that is scheduled to take place in Washington in the Oval Office of the White House between President Cyril Ramaphosa and the U.S. President Donald Trump. So the visit signals a strategic effort to strengthen economic ties and address global diplomatic challenges and perhaps chart a new course for cooperation in a changing geopolitical landscape. Let's speak to Ambassador Welile Nhlapo, a senior political advisor, but someone with deep insights into how the world of diplomacy works. Good morning to you, Ambassador. Thank you for your time. I just want to get your general sense of, how the build-up has played out, the build-up to this meeting. There's a sense in which, in the reportage, perhaps, we emphasize on the possibility of a showdown, confrontation once they're face-to-face about all the things that have been said between the two leaders over the last few months. But also, I suppose we have to factor in the fact that there have been other conversations, perhaps telephonic conversations. So that the words that have been spoken up to this point, as well as the intermittent interactions in the last few months, what tone do they set for this meeting today?
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and good morning to your listeners.
Good morning.
I wouldn't be necessarily worried about the tone that has been said, because quite a lot of speculation has gone on based on the previous experiences between President Trump and others, and particularly the Zelensky meeting. Now, I think the issues are different. The temperaments of the interlocutors are different. The interests are different. And the disagreements are different. I think we need to move on the basis of what is the actual relationship between us and the U.S. in terms of trade and in terms of where we don't see eye to eye on a number of geopolitical issues. Which is normal for any country, any country's relationships. But those are the issues that are not new, and these are the issues that we have navigated before.
Yeah.
And these are the issues that they themselves, in the past weekend, are the countries in question that they've been directly dealing with. So I would not be necessarily worried.
Yeah.
But what I would be worried about is if they want to tell us how and who we should be able to talk to, based on what. That would be problematic. That could cause a breakdown.
So exactly on that point, to what extent do you believe the disagreements may overshadow the conversations around trade and cooperation going forward? And in particular, those really contentious issues, for instance, the issue of South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice against Israel. There's been a reading that says much of what we see, much of what is said by Washington about South Africa may have, at its core, this grievance about South Africa having taken the position that it took in relation to the situation in Gaza and against Israel.
Yeah, any action you take against Israel on the basis of what they've been doing to the Palestinians, the genocide that they've been committed, which has been proven, there's been no real dispute about that. And I think a number of other countries are following suit and saying the same thing that we have said. The issue here is that if you do that and take those kind of actions, and truth be told, the enabler here is the U.S. They've been giving Israel all the instruments to execute this genocide. They've been protecting them in all the UN processes wherever this matter has come up. And whenever the issue of Israel has come up, they've been giving them diplomatic cover and protecting them. And therefore, they will feel aggrieved if in any other way the issue is being brought up and then directly they're going to be brought onto the spotlight.
Yeah.
And it's understandable that they would be irritated to the extent to which they are.
So how does President Ramaphosa, how do you imagine he should be approaching this conversation? There's been a lot said about Donald Trump and his performance, especially once the cameras are on, and how he wants to project himself as a strong man, a strong leader, versus what perhaps President Ramaphosa in part will be seeking to achieve, which is to clarify our country's transformation laws and the constitution and how those two relate, as well as this whole notion that has been peddled that suggests that there's a white genocide in South Africa. In other words, Ambassador, I'm asking, how do you rationally and calmly explain these issues against the personality of Donald Trump?
Well, if it moves on the basis that there are cards to be played, as we have seen in the interaction with Zelensky, do we really have cards to play? What does he mean by that? Is that going to be the attitude? I think we've got the leverage to an extent. And there is a reality of the relationship that exists. That is our card. That is our trump card. And you remain calm. You deal with the issues that you want to deal with. He'll yell, he'll do whatever he wants. You ignore that, the issue of the temperament, because you know there is a temperament. The same temperament played out with other leaders, and they chose not to play into that space, and they proceeded to make the point that they wanted to make. Because there's always the other side of the reality that has to be brought to the attention of anybody. And it is up to those who are watching to come to any conclusion as to who is serious about building or maintaining a relationship.
So in a meeting such as this one, and a negotiation, I suppose there's always that give and take. What in your mind are some of the gives that South Africa should be prepared to make? I mean, there's been all of these conversations about, don't compromise our principles at the international level, international law level in relation to the ICJ case. there have been conversations in the last 24 hours about, personalities perhaps and personal interests of the likes of people who have the ear of the US president, such as Elon Musk, in relation to their business interests. What are the give and takes? Do we compromise on some of the policies as they apply to American companies, or do we stand firm and stand our ground? And how do we then navigate that? What are the gives that we are prepared to have on the table?
Well, some of the issues that they have raised are issues that have to do with transformation of South African society.
Yeah.
Historical injustices that needs to be addressed. And that is in our constitution. If our president exercises his oath of office to sign into laws that have been legitimately passed by our parliaments, nobody else except the parliament can be able to debate and reverse those issues. And to an extent, not even the Constitutional Court, because sometimes matters go right up to the Constitutional Court. Their responsibility is to interpret and not to be dragged directly into issues of areas of conflict of interest in relation to the separation of powers. We therefore have to maintain the manner in which we manage our state affairs, because at the center of all this is statecraft. It means that we should ourselves not open any gaps that will play into issues that other people might want to take advantage of. We are a constitutional democracy. We've got a constitution and laws that are based on that constitution. We've got a functioning parliament. It's got its own challenges and problems. We have a limping executive, which is as a result of the outcome of the elections. And we're trying to manage those issues in whatever way we can. But it cannot be that anybody, any country should want to dictate how we should manage our affairs, particularly if we are doing things in line with our constitutional priorities and prerogatives.
Lastly, Ambassador Nhlapo, does it matter who is in the room when these conversations are being had, and what percentage of the conversation happens behind closed doors, and what percentage then plays itself out in the glare of the media? Do those dynamics matter?
No, the glare of the media is normally a scene-setting basis where issues are navigated broadly to just give a sense of why it is necessary and important to meet. The negotiations take place behind the scenes, and they are not between heads of state. They are between officials directed by the ministers who have participated and have a full sense of the areas in which they need to explore and try to come towards a particular understanding of what can be changed, what can be reinforced, what can be removed to the mutual benefit of both countries. That's where negotiations come in. It cannot be in the glare of the media. And it cannot be in a mass situation. It is a structured, technical process that needs the necessary expertise and the people who would be entrusted to engage on those issues.
Absolutely.
Not for the head of state to get into those details.
All right. I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Ambassador Welile Nhlapo, Senior Political Advisor, but also a veteran in terms of diplomatic practice in this country.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Got three big routes coming in from the north of Pretoria towards the city centre. They are all under pressure this morning. Lights off on Gesina's, Jan Haynes. That's heavy. Paul Kruger through Mayville, Capital Park area, heavy. And SKM Pathlali backing up from Vanderhof deep into CBD territory. There may still be some traffic lights down on SKM Pathlali as well. Joburg side, Main and Sloane. There's been a collision there in the Bryanston area. Bike 1's pretty heavy again today from Boyson's all the way through to Grayston Drive. If you're on your way to Sandton, it's heavy. Coming in from the Vaal, the R59, probably still about a 15-minute queue between Clip River Drive and an obstruction by Swakoppies Road. Durban's been battling along in the wet weather conditions this morning. A crash now on Umhlanga Rocks Drive between Umhlanga and Durban North. That's busy both ways. Tanker skidding off the M7 at Queensborough. There's queues both directions, either down towards the Bluff or coming up from the N2 towards that Belleville exit. And the M4 is pretty heavily backed between Blue Lagoon and Umhlanga both ways under pressure this morning. Cape Town, a big multi-vehicle pile-up plus another collision happening this morning between Wynberg, well, sort of top of Wynberg Hill and Constantia. The road was closed. I believe it may have reopened, but there's a heavy backlog going from Newlands down to Constantia side this morning. Still very busy around Mitchell's Plain, the M7 queuing both ways into the roadworks at Samora Michelle. And just to the north, you've got works all over Govan and Becky at Danafontaine Road, bottom of Nyanga, and that's quite heavily backed up in that area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Being kind to each other is Ubudu.
It's always time to play on Takalani Sesame.
Chetu, do you want to play Market Day now?
Doing things together as a community can be even more fun than doing them on our own.
Amma loves it so much when we can just be ourselves and learn about our culture together.
Tune in to see what makes you special for the all-new episodes of Takalani Sesame. Weekdays at 3 p.m. on SABC2.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
It's coming up to 6 minutes to 8. Some credit to the initial reporting of our colleagues at EWN for this story. The Gauteng provincial government has come under some criticism for its withdrawal from a sanitation support program in Emfuleni local municipality, which has left residents of the Ramaphosa informal settlement in dire conditions. Portable toilets, once funded by the province, have gone unserviced for months, with the municipality citing financial constraints and requesting additional time to restore basic sanitation services. So let's speak to the MEC in Gauteng, the MEC for Human Settlements, and that's Tasneem Mutara. Good morning to you, MEC. Thank you for your time. Just clarify for us, you had a grant and the support that you were extending to Emfuleni for the provision of sanitation. Is this the grant that was also directly responsible for that service of portable toilets that were being provided in this area of Ramaphosa informal settlement?
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me. So yes, essentially, look, this is a responsibility and a function that municipalities are meant to carry out. The provision of sanitation is a basic service, and it's the responsibility of municipalities. But for a while, the province has been supporting municipalities by implementing it in the southern municipalities, so that's Lesedi, Emfuleni, and Midvaal, and in the western municipalities, that's Merafong, Mogaliseki, and Randrest. But the grant, we've been using a portion of the grant, conditional grant. That cap has been reduced over a period of time. It's currently at about 5%, and it's not enough to be able to service the 6 municipalities. We wrote and informed and engaged municipalities last year throughout the year that we only had funding until our end of our financial year, and that municipalities should prepare to take over the service. Unfortunately, though, municipalities, the states that they are in, they cite that they just don't have the funding to do it.
So when I hear you talk about that cap of the grant having been reduced, in simple terms, are we talking here about budget cuts?
Yes, it's budget cuts and just, yes, overall budget constraints. So we had funding last year. Provincial Treasury covered the shortfall because the grant was not enough to cover the service. So Provincial Treasury covered that shortfall until the end of the financial year, our end of financial year, which is the end of March.
So what do we say about the human dignity of the people, of the residents of these areas, MEC? Because, I mean, from the reporting of our colleagues at EWN, those toilets going uncleaned for months, you can only imagine just the hazards that they represent to the community there.
Yes, most certainly. Look, for us, we've been engaging National Human Settlements as well as Provincial Treasury, and I'm sure that between the two, we should get a favorable response by the end of the week. It is a human rights, human rights concern, and just the fact that we've got to work together to be able to provide the service. But, it is putting a terrible strain on already burdened, funds. We have mushrooming informal settlements, just the inability also of municipalities to enforce bylaws is adding a strain consistently. So we've got to work together with the municipalities, with National Human Settlements, Provincial Treasury, and just community stakeholders. Our informal settlements are sprawling. Just on Monday, we had reports of an informal settlement that's springing up close to Witkoppen Road.
Yeah.
That's privately owned land. So, now we also have informal settlements where there's invasions taking place on private land, not only government land. So it's becoming a problem.
MEC Motara? No, I think we lost the line to the MEC there. I don't know what happened. Just as she was making that point about the mushrooming of various informal settlements. So there you have it. I think we got enough out of that conversation with MEC Motara just about the difficulties that have been brought on by budget cuts. Same conversation we've been having, really, that the Department of Human Settlements and the Gauteng government were supporting municipalities whose core function this area of sanitation. But, they've also come to a point where there's been a cap in as far as that conditional grant that they were using for that support, and therefore they are not able to continue with that support. But I think we got enough out of that conversation with MEC Tasneem Motara, MEC in Gauteng for the Department of Human Settlements.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
Let me take advantage and play one or two of those voice notes that you've been sending me in the last while. Let me hear what this person has to say about the meeting between President Ramaphosa and President Trump.
Good morning, Thulas, SAFM listeners. Thulas, this morning just want to say, let's go into Donald Trump's leadership and leaders in the country heads. How many non-white leaders are there within his cabinet, within different political parties? Come on. It shows you that it's strict white supremacy that must rule. And what he wants to do, he wants to duplicate that around the world. And that gaan nie werk, bra. Dankie, bye-bye.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that sentiment and that view that you've shared there. At 8 a.m., let's go straight to N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, analysts expect budget to be passed this time around and asbestos corruption trial within a trial expected to resume. Good morning. Analysts expect South Africa's national budget will be passed following significant consultations among parties within the Government of National Unity. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will today make his third attempt at tabling the budget following a standoff over a VAT hike which National Treasury has since withdrawn. Chief Economist at Investec Annabelle Bishop says while the budget seeks to raise revenue, government may also be looking to cut down on spending and limit borrowing.
Looking forwards, South Africa is not expected to see significant tax increases either. Instead, the budget is likely to see most of the revenue needed raised from failure to give relief for bracket creep when people's salaries rise due to inflation-adjusted increases. Then, of course, if the individual does not see relief in terms of going into a higher bracket, they do end up being taxed more. Also on the cards potentially is a lift in the fuel levy, and these factors in the main, along with expenditure cuts, should provide a balanced budget. Going forward, government needs to focus on fiscal consolidation.
Meanwhile, the DA says it wants Minister Enoch Godongwana to provide a comprehensive spending plan when tabling the budget. DA MP Dr. Mark Burke says the main objectives of a spending review will help to remove excessive and overlapping government expenditure.
We're expecting the Minister to speak to a comprehensive spending review to be conducted by this government, and the findings from that spending review to be implemented in the form of an omnibus bill that takes away areas of excessive spending and overlapping government departments that do the same work to a suboptimal standard. If we can get this right, we will create space in the fiscus, meaning the money at our disposal, to focus on the projects that we need. And while we're doing all of this, the DA is not expecting to see a cutback in frontline services such as doctors, nurses, teachers, and policemen.
The MK party has renewed its calls for the removal of the NPA head Shamla Batoy, citing incompetence and inability to prosecute critical cases. The party says the acquittal of deported Nigerian televangelist Timothy Omotoso, as well as lack of progress in the murder case of former ANC Youth League leader Sindiso Magaka, constitute grounds to have Batoy dismissed. Spunelo Nomvalo is an MK party MP.
Because of the incompetence of the current NDPP or of the current incumbent, that institution is highly compromised. And if we really care about the people of South Africa, and if we really care about the fight against crime in South Africa, we must recall, or the president, because he's the only one who has powers to initiate the process, must recall the current NDPP with immediate effect.
The trial within a trial in the 255 million rand asbestos roof removal corruption case is expected to resume in the Free State High Court in Bloemfontein today. Judge Philip Lobsher adjourned proceedings last week to allow the prosecution to bring its next witness. The trial within a trial seeks to establish whether the Free State High Court has jurisdiction to try Murwadi Cholota, who is the former PA of then Free State Premier Ace Magashule. Cholota has submitted that her extradition from the US was unlawful. The second state witness that's expected to take the stand will be another investigator who is one of the two officers who met with Cholota in the USA in September of 2021. Eskom says it has sufficient electricity capacity to sustain the grid during the upcoming winter months. Eskom Group Chief Executive Dan Morokane says despite the recent implementation of load shedding, the power utility is now in a strong position and is well prepared for the increased demand for electricity. He presented Eskom's State of South Africa's Electricity System address in Cape Town yesterday.
We'll go comfortably to about 46 gigawatts of installed capacity. Availability is hover between 60-65, so you're not really having maximum utilization of your installed capacity. What is key is for us to be able to meet our peak demands in the middle of winter, which tend to shoot up to 34 gigawatts of capacity. And we use all our technologies available, including using our picking stations, the diesel consumption stations, for that hour in the evening or two when we need to respond to it.
And finally, President Cyril Ramaphosa says trade relations will be high on the agenda when he meets U.S. President Donald Trump today. Trump imposed high tariffs to several countries, including South Africa, when he returned to office. The president says Pretoria wants to increase trade with Washington.
Trade relations are the most important. That's what has brought us here. We want to come out of the United States with a really good trade deal, investment promotion. We invest in the United States and they invest in us, and we want to strengthen those relations, and we want to consolidate good relations between our two countries.
Recapping the top story, analysts expect South Africa's national budget will be passed following significant consultations among parties within the Government of National Unity. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will today make his third attempt at tabling the budget. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Looking for some feel-good news? Jermaine, a 43-year-old man, feels like a winner because he now saves 360 Rand a month on his car insurance premium. That's right. Jermaine switched to Outsurance and now saves a mind-blowing 360 Rand a month on his 2021 Mazda 3 1.5 Dynamic. Outsurance clients always get something out. You could too. Get a quote today and see how much they could save you on your car insurance. Make today the day you switch and save with Outsurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines, we look at the success of the Amajita squad, their triumph showing South Africa's football on the up. We'll hear from Coach Raymond Mdaka. And in rugby, Coach Rassie Erasmus has started with the alignment camps ahead of the July tests. The details around 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow if you're workbound into Pretoria Central this morning. Got three big routes coming through from the north. They're all heavy. SKM Pavilion to Baraba Stud, Paul Kruger through Capital Park, and Johan Haynes with traffic lights out at Gazina. Heavy as well. The N1 south from Rigel moving through the R21 towards Boerta Avenue is slow. Crash on the R21 north of Clayville, Olifantsfontein Road, up by St George's Hotel, pretty heavy. And if you're on your way to Sandton, a lot of traffic again this morning. Boyson's right through to Grayston Drive. Durban crash M7 westbound at Belleville Road out at Queens Road. Big queues from Bel Air and Wakesley side. So if you've left the sort of Rossborough area wanting to get through to Pinetown, there's really big traffic there. The M4's got traffic all over it between Umhlanga and Blue Lagoon. A crash on Umhlanga Rocks Drive between Umhlanga and Durban North causing some backlogs as well. Cape Town very heavy this morning on Marine Drive. Sunningdale to Racecourse Road is the delay. And then from just after the paddocks by about Milnerton High School all the way through to Pardon Island still jammed up, and the M3 South remaining closed at the top of Weinberg Hill towards Constantia due to a multi-vehicle collision. Very heavy from Newlands and some clogging up on local alternative routes as you link off at the Travato Link Road there. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's coming up to 10 minutes after 8 on this Wednesday. What a Wednesday it is. Of course, it is expected to be quite consequential on two fronts. That is in Washington, in the Oval Office, between President Cyril Ramaphosa and the U.S. President Donald Trump. Much expected from that meeting, but also in terms of the budget, the third attempt to finally getting it right for Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. Where will he find the additional revenue, if additional revenue is to be found, or will we see spending cuts? And can we take any more spending cuts? Those are some of the questions. Can we retain the good that was entailed in the 12th of March budget? Because I did hear commentary that said there was a lot in that budget that was quite good in terms of the priorities, the hiring of doctors and nurses to try and replenish a depleted civil service, but also the infrastructure spend and other programs to try and stimulate the economy. All of those questions will be answered when Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana takes to the podium at 2 p.m. To deliver this year's budget. Third time that he's trying to do that. Let me read one or two of your messages. Someone talking about a situation playing itself out in the city of Tshwane, saying, please can SAFM and the listeners assist me in the injustice that has been done by Tshwane municipality to the community of Soshanguve. They are aware of the issue, but they are showing no interest in resolving it. There are people in the community who are paying rates, but those payments are not for their properties, as the RDP houses that were allocated to them are not the ones represented on their title deeds. It is said that this is also affecting the estates of families, and the municipality is not interested in resolving it. So it will be interesting to hear what that issue really is about. And then I wanted to pick up on another message that I was reading. You see, this is what happens with these messages now. When you want to read it, you just can't find it. Someone was saying, I think it was SJ, making the point that sarcastically saying that at least President Ramaphosa has taken the real president of South Africa. In fact, there I've found the message from SJ. SJ says, at least President Ramaphosa has taken with him the real president of South Africa in the name of Johan Rupert. This in the wake of reports that, the billionaire Johan Rupert is among the people who are in Washington, D.C., and News 24 saying that they believe he was instrumental in brokering that meeting between the two leaders. So there you have it. Some of your messages coming through. But I'll take your calls in this hour. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. Please send me WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. The third hour of the Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Time. When you're a kid, it moves slower than a sloth trying to get through airport security. There is just so much of it. Skip forward a few years to your 20s. Time is still your friend. It says have some balance. Go party and have fun. Then your 30s hit. And time suddenly steps on the accelerator like it's trying to catch a traffic light before it goes red. 40s. Now time is moving faster than your 10-year-old on a sugar high. 50. You're desperately trying to save as much as you can, but time is moving so fast. And all you can think is, where did all the time go? That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money, and then money gives you more time for some much-deserved you time. Now, isn't that a compelling enough reason to invest? Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
Some crimes fade with time, but the truth, it never stays buried. From the makers of critically acclaimed drama comes Unforgotten Season 3. Detectives Cassie Stewart and Sunny Khan return to unravel another cold case. A missing boy, a hidden body, and secrets that refuse to die. When the past resurfaces, lives will change forever. Unforgotten Season 3, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Because justice has no expiration date.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matriek mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Yeah, the other message I wanted to read says, Thulas, Pretoria is not okay. Very cold and strong wind. That's skis. That's the reality we are grappling with in many parts of the country. Let me take your calls now. Let me start with Nhlanhla in Durban. My brother, good morning.
Good morning, my brother. My brother, before I go on my point, let me pass on the issue of the Minister of Department of Labor.
Yes.
The department is busy giving out money to assist businesses. Why they can't use the same money to hire more labor inspectors so that we can get rid so that we can sort out the issue of enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't it, Nhlanhla, that the money for UIF is ring-fenced and it's raised in a particular way and you can't just divert it and use it for something else?
My brother. First, that UIF money was stolen from the contributors.
Yeah.
Through the unjustified policy which says people can contribute for 30 years, they are only going to receive the amount for 4 years.
Yeah.
26 years, it's like tax.
Yeah.
When the government makes the policy, they need to consult with the people and
100%.
Yes. Who are those people who were consulted when that policy was made?
Yeah.
Section 72 usho kanjani. Of the Constitution, people's needs must be responded to, and the public must be encouraged to participate in policy making.
Absolutely. My brother?
Yes.
Do you mind if we leave it there for this morning? We'll talk again. That's my brother, Nhlanhla in Durban. Thank you for calling, Nhlanhla. Let me move on to Jock in KwaZulu-Natal. You want to talk about the U.S. president. Good morning to you, Jock. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Thulasizwe, to you and your team. Always excellent show, excellent service, and we can start the morning on that. Thulasizwe, I just wanted to let you know what the professor was talking about the relationship, or that Donald Trump's embargoes or the tariffs were actually because of Israel and the stance that we had taken onto that platform. I think that could be possibly true, but to be honest with you, it's a religious-based argument in terms of why the Israelis and Palestinians are fighting. I did a little bit of research the other day because we always have this conversation, and I'd like just to let you know about the facts. The fact is that Jesus Christ was born 400 to 500 years before the Prophet Muhammad was. So, in actual fact, when the Palestinians say that they were there before the Jewish people, that's actually incorrect, because according to the Quran, it actually does say that Jesus Christ came first, and his word was actually now tainted, or his practices were wrong. So, I'd like to just first say that. So, coming from that status, I would understand why most Christian people may or may not align themselves with what Israel's fight was. I do not dispute that Israel's fight has now become something that actually does become something where it's unethical, and that is really true. The other thing is also, when Mr. Ramaphosa or President Ramaphosa goes there and has this discussion with Donald Trump, I think that there's so much of effort of trying to get these situations correct, but we don't look at the children's lives that have been lost, the children that go malnourished, even the children that are basically abused. I mean, every single day we hear about it. And I think we as South Africans need to emphasize more on our own people than worrying about others outside.
Jock, thank you for that, making those points there. That's Jock. I do imagine that a lot of you will have some responses to what Jock has been saying on those two issues, but I do need to move on and take more calls. Mbowana in Mahikeng, the subject I want to hear about more and more and more. I just can't get enough. Tell me, what's on your mind about Amajita this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead.
Congratulations for the Amajita. You see, Dan Jordan and Jacob Zuma. I want to congratulate these two leaders. These two leaders, they put our country into a world stage, because everything been changed from zero to somewhere where we are. Because if Dan Jordan could not change the strategy of SAFA, we could not talking about the cups that we are winning now. And if Jacob Zuma did not change the politics of the country, we could not have this democracy that we are busy shaping the country into for better.
Yeah.
So really, these two leaders, they did play a part, and they are busy playing a part into our country.
All right, Mbowana, thank you for that. Let me move on. Lastly, for this moment at least, Tula in Bedford View. Good morning. You want to talk about Donald Trump? Please go ahead. Ngiyapila kunjani? Please go ahead.
Two things, Tula. One, I think I want to applaud you for the geography. The issue we're talking to this Department of Weather. Yeah, they give us so technical terms that we don't
I agree.
understand.
Yeah.
Yes. Then second, that we don't have seas in South Africa. We have oceans. We are never surrounded by seas. If you go to their website, they'll tell you, no, the high seas, whatever. We don't have that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I didn't know that technical detail. But the point about it, Thula, is that this is information that people are meant to act upon, right? So if you're saying there's a warning,
that's how serious it is.
Make it clear for me what exactly is the warning, not upper trough and cut off low and
understand. South, not what. Come on, tell me to be hot and I should make sure that
I hope they are listening. It did read a little better today, I must say, compared to yesterday. Thank you for that, Thula.
All right,
that's Thula in Bedford View there.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
22 minutes after 8. Let's focus on this story now, on this issue, just raising our awareness, really. Myopia or nearsightedness is emerging as a silent but escalating childhood pandemic, affecting millions of children worldwide. As urbanization, screen time and indoor lifestyles increase, so does the incidence of this vision disorder. Here comes that word. The team was challenging me. The Ophthalmological Society of South Africa, together with SASPOS and the SASCRS, are using Myopia Awareness Week, that is from the 23rd to the 29th of May, to call for greater awareness, early detection and proactive management, particularly among school-aged children. So let's speak to Dr. Cor van Zyl, a member of the South African Society of Ophthalmologists. Good morning to you, Doc, and thank you for your time. I have to pause every time I say the name of your profession there. But tell me a bit more. What is myopia and what is the incidence thereof globally and in South Africa?
Morning, Thulasizwe. Firstly, 10 out of 10 for your pronunciation.
Thank you.
Secondly, thank you for the opportunity afforded to us as ophthalmologists to raise awareness about this. And then to jump into your question, at the moment, worldwide, they're talking about 22 to 23% of the world's population that are fall under the category of being myopic. And within the next 25 years, projections seem to touch on 50% of the world's population. So you can just imagine, what a problem that's going to pose for all eye care professionals. In South Africa, we haven't got great data. They talk about anything from 2 to 10% of children, depending on which groups you look at, that can be defined as myopic or then nearsighted.
Yeah. Is it the incidence of myopia more pronounced among children?
Not so much amongst children. But the research shows that it is something that develops in childhood in at-risk individuals and then progresses. And the word that they use is linear growth. So in other words, just normal growth. So when a child stops growing, in most cases, the myopia will stabilize, but that's not a given.
And what is the mix of factors that predispose a person to the development of myopia?
So there are genetic risk factors, and then there are environmental risk factors. So the genetic ones is if one parent or both parents are myopic or nearsighted, then you're at a child is at increased risk. Ethnicity plays a role. So people who are from East Asian descent, they've got very, very high numbers of myopia. And then, but we can't really do anything about our genetics. Not yet.
Yeah.
So the environmental risk factors, they play a very, very important role in trying to halt progression, or then, just stop myopia from occurring.
Oh, so in terms of the environmental factors, those are the factors that I imagine are more within our control. So you're saying those help if we manage them to sort of reduce or slow down the progression of myopia. Which ones are these environmental factors? In my intro, I was talking about urbanization, screen time, and indoor lifestyles. But what does that mean exactly?
Yes, so that is a great summary you gave. I think just the one thing I'd like to mention is there must be detection. So a child must be screened, and that should happen. It's good practice for a child to be seen by either an ophthalmologist or an optometrist once before they start school for a formal assessment to see whether they have any refractive error or focus problem, and on this topic specifically myopic. And if it is detected, then one can look at ways to treat that. In terms of what one can do, time outdoors has been shown to be very, very beneficial.
Yeah.
So that's exposure to sunlight. South Africa has got many challenges, but we've got many pluses too. And on this topic, that's one of them. We've got great weather.
Yeah.
So children should play outside.
Sure. And what signs should parents be looking out for? I hear the point you're making about regular screening and checkups, but what are the signs that I should be looking out for that will say, perhaps I need to get this child to an ophthalmologist?
So simple observation by people who have an interest in the child, so the parents, the grandparents, family, other family friends, even teachers. Simple observation by people like that can go a long way. The simplest is to see where a child holds a book, or nowadays a tablet or a device. If it's very close, uncomfortably close, then it means they do that because that's where they can see. And that means that something is in focus at that distance. So that's indicative. If they move uncomfortably close to a television, it's probably because they want to see what's going on. Squinting. Those are the three basic the three basics, and then later on one can look if there's a hesitancy to participate in sport or things like that. But those ones of where an object is held, that's probably the one that we should focus on.
Doc, thank you. This conversation has been particularly beneficial even for me as a parent. That's Dr. Cor van Zyl, who is a member of the South African Society of Ophthalmologists.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning. We're still celebrating South Africa's under-20 national team, Amajita. They're back home after conquering Africa for the very first time with their historic 1-0 win over Morocco. And that was in the AFCON final. Coach Raymond Mdaka's boys avenged the class of 97 and brought back the title 28 years later. Let's hear now from Coach Mdaka.
Sometimes if it doesn't work out for us tactically, because the opponents also would come up with their tactics, we must have the character to fight. And indeed, in most of the games, you would find that maybe we don't start well, but we're able to come back.
Moving to the SAFA president now, Danny Jordaan also praising Amajita for making footballing history. The SAFA president invited Coach Mdaka to draw up his itinerary for the World Cup in Chile over the coming weeks. FIFA is set to conduct the draw late next month.
The coach said that he will immediately set a plan for the preparation of the World Cup. And of course, we'll have 23 players and not 21. So it's up to him to put together the plan, and we can just support the plan. So whatever he comes with, and we will have a meeting in the week coming, and also the other coaches, Hugo Bruce will also support, and the other coaches, Alman is here, so we will give him maximum support.
And the Tottenham Hotspur captain Son Heung-min says he's ready for what could become the biggest day of his career. Son, now one win away from his first career title and ending the club's long-awaited trophy drought, leads Spurs against Manchester United for the All-Premier League final of the Europa League tonight, 9 p.m.
Yeah, it will be very special, and we will be obviously history moments. But I stay here 10 years, and I just wanted to win the trophy, but which is nobody done it, from where I've been here, in a 10 years time. So yeah, tomorrow is gonna be a massive day for the club first of all, and for the boys, and obviously for me as well.
And finally, rugby. Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus facing a selection headache ahead of July's test with over 50 players in camp this week. While familiar faces like Siya Kolisi, Cheslin Kolbe and De Toyma anchor the team, it's the rising stars like Sasha Feinberg, Ngome Zulu and Archie Snyman who are turning heads. Pollard's return to the Bulls raises questions about fly-half pecking order, while the injured list includes Malherbe, Fourie and Visser. Erasmus is expected to mix youth and experience for the Italy and Georgia tests. That's where we wrap it up for sport. We'll tackle more around 12:30 with John Gericke. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, workers are hoping the revised budget to be tabled today will be more people-centred and push for economic growth and job creation. Labour Union federations COSATU, FEDUSA and SAFTU have urged the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to move away from austerity measures introduced in previous budgets. Police are investigating a case of murder after a woman was shot dead in Vrygrond in Lavender Hill on the Cape Flats. Police say the motive for last night's killing is still unknown. And the NPA has confirmed the inquest into the deaths of the Cradock 4 will go ahead early next month. Various role players, including the NPA and police, appeared before Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Justice and Constitutional Development. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretoria first up. The run in from the north into work in the city centre is east on the 2 of the big 3, but it's Steve Biko to Gazina that remains heavily backed up. Steve Biko down onto Johan Haynes through Gazina. No traffic lights there this morning. A heavy queue. R21 north, a collision just after Olifants Fontaine Road. If you're on your way from the airport towards Pretoria, quite a big backlog to work through there as well. The Mike 1 Park down up to Grayston Drive, looking quite slow this morning. Also, Durban, the M7 tanker crash at Bel Air Road, or Belleville Road, I beg your pardon. I always get those two mixed up. It's at Belleville Road in the Queensborough area. It's going west away from the N2 highway on your way through Queensborough towards Pinetown. It's quite a heavy backlog to work through there. And the M7 coming the other side from North Dean through Malvern towards the N2 is quite a backlog as well. There may be a closure of that M7 to pull that tanker out of the bushes at some time. N2 north through the wet weather continues to be heavily backed up from the M7 through the Westwood Mall territory as well. Cape Town this morning, M3 going south remains closed. A big multi-vehicle pile-up. Some reports suggesting 10 vehicles involved in this. It happened between Travato Link and Constantia Main, so basically Wynberg Hill territory. It's the southbound side towards Tokai that's closed. Big backlogs from Bishop's Court, Newlands area on the highway towards the closure, and then the big backlog on the alternative route that takes you down Travato Link and winds you around through Wynberg back onto the M3 at Constantia. So you might want to just avoid that and hit something like the main road instead. The M3 going inbound from Wynberg Hill up to Hospital Bend still heavy, and the N1 into Cape Town still plenty of traffic coming through slowly from Plattercliff Hill towards City Centre. Lots of traffic on Marine Drive as well. Sunningdale to Tableview, Milnerton through to Pardon Island. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
For one more time, one more update, let's say good morning to Ndauling Lichela. Ndauling, he will take to the podium one more time, will Enoch Godongwana. Budget 3.0, locked but loaded?
Yes. Today, D-Day, yet again, Thulasizwe Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana prepares to table the budget in Parliament for the third time, after consulting with coalition partners to address previous disputes. Now, the government, of course, had to scrap plans to increase VAT due to opposition and now faces a 75 billion rand revenue shortfall. Godongwana remains committed to reducing debt by 30% by 2030, with economic growth seen as key to achieving this goal. Now, to reach this target, the government aims to create an environment conducive to growth, which will in turn help stabilize debt and meet fiscal targets. Now, many economists will be eyeing Treasury's plans to plug the gap while delivering a pro-growth budget, this proving to be, of course, a tough balancing act for Treasury. Meanwhile, the minister's approach has shifted after failing to pass the budget twice, with Godongwana individually consulting with government partners and presenting the broad strokes of the budget to the cabinet. This new approach seems to have paid off, with Deputy Finance Minister David Masondo, indicating that thorough consultations with coalition parties would make a fourth budget presentation unnecessary. Now, the budget coincides with President Ramaphosa's U.S. working visit. Several ministers have joined the president and won't be attending the third iteration of the budget.
Yeah, in fact, the seat there, we will have acting president Wan Kweta Mantashe, because even the deputy president is also out of the country. How do you pronounce this name? Is it Newton? Tell me about Newton and them narrowing their losses.
So Newton, formerly known as Transaction Capital.
Oh, I see. Okay.
They rebranded because they wanted to leave everything that happened in the past in the past, right?
Yes.
So they're making headway
As one
with
does.
They're making headway to us with their turnaround plan, but they're not out of the woods just yet. The group initiated a 2-year turnaround plan, and 1 year into it, it has managed to sell non-core assets and unbundle We Buy Cars. These efforts have resulted in a simplified business structure with reduced expenses. Now, looking at its half-year performance, revenue declined 4% to 1.48 billion rands due to reduced non-performing loan portfolio acquisitions and economic challenges. While it is still loss-making, it managed to narrow the core loss from continuing operations to 71 million rands. Now, Newton has two customer-centric divisions, Newton SA and Newton International. The local unit specializes in debt collection and recovery services, while Newton International provides business process outsourcing services to clients in the UK, US, and Australia.
All right, lastly, Dowling, what kind of a day can we expect in the markets, especially in light of that upcoming budget?
So local markets likely to open in the green. We've seen the JSE proving to be really resilient. Trade, however, might be subdued as all eyes are on Finman Enoch Godongwana for his third try at tabling the budget. Investors also eyeing talks between President Trump and President Ramaphosa. Ahead of the big news day, the rand is trading stronger at 17.90 to the greenback. Meanwhile, in the U.S., futures in negative territory. Traders on that front awaiting fresh market-moving catalysts while indulging in some profit-taking. And then lastly, in Asia, China's rate cut euphoria still boosting markets there, but slowing Japanese exports hitting the Nikkei. That index, the only one in the red in that region, shedding over 0.5% this morning.
Let me take advantage of the fact that you are campaigning on the ticket of being a listening and responsive leadership. Recently, a listener suggested a story. You picked it up and ran with it. Wouldn't it be nice in the coming days or so for you to come back with examples of these companies that are trying to put their past behind them and have rebranded, and just, a roundup of how that has gone for many of them?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, we can do that.
Yeah.
We can do that. I will put on my thinking cap and
Leadership.
We can get to it.
Thank you, leadership. Dowling Lechala there. She's kept you updated on all the news to do with the economy, business, and the markets in the last 3 hours.
Some crimes fade with time, but the truth, it never stays buried. From the makers of critically acclaimed drama comes Unforgotten Season 3. Detectives Cassie Stewart and Sunny Khan return to unravel another cold case. A missing boy, a hidden body, and secrets that refuse to die. When the past resurfaces, lives will change forever. Unforgotten Season 3, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Because justice has no expiration date.
Are we ready for a real conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
20 minutes to 9. Let's bring you this interview. It really has to do with the weather conditions that we are witnessing at the moment, with a cold front expected to sweep across parts of the country this week. KwaZulu-Natal's disaster management teams, we are told, are on high alert. The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs has assured residents that preparations are in place to respond swiftly to any weather-related emergencies. So let's speak to Senzelwe Mzila, who is the spokesperson for the KwaZulu-Natal Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So confirmation from Reverend Thulasizwe Simelane, the MEC, that the province is bracing for impact of the two approaching cold fronts. What does bracing for impact mean for you and your readiness as a department?
Good morning to you, Thulasizwe, and good morning to the listeners. Thulasizwe, the MEC for COGTA has rightfully indicated that the Provincial Disaster Management Center is on standby to deal with any eventuality. As we speak right now, there's severe thunderstorms that are being experienced right now. There has been a weather warning that has been issued by the Weather Service a couple of hours ago to the effect that large areas in the province are experiencing right now severe thunderstorms. So when the MEC says that the province or the management teams are ready, it means that the systems are there in place as we speak right now to deal with any eventuality.
What are these systems? Are we talking here evacuation routes, evacuation resources, vehicles, search and rescue operations and equipment? What are we talking about when we're saying the systems are being readied?
Well, so the first priority for the MEC is informing communities across the province of any eventuality that might occur. As we speak right now, the weather warning that we've received is being disseminated across the province through a number of structures, such as our local municipalities, ward councillors, and also structures such as the institution of traditional leadership. But also the second layer, is that of coordinating with stakeholders. We've got a number of stakeholders that we are working closely with, specifically with the aim of beefing up the province's ability to respond. These stakeholders, all of them, have been put on notice and they are ready to move should anything happen as we speak right now. Yeah. Also, I think what is important as well, with the warning that we've received, there is a high risk of flooding in a number of communities, and we have stakeholders that are very crucial to us that have indicated that they will be able to move with us as soon as anything happens in the province.
And that's the difficulty, isn't it, Senzelwe, in terms of what exactly you'll be responding to? Because what I've noticed in the last few bouts that we've had of disasters occurring, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, is that there's one weather event that then has the cascading effect of producing another outcome. So you were talking a few moments ago about the thunderstorms. There's also prediction of snowfalls in high-lying areas. But that then sometimes manifests in such issues as mudslides and sometimes flooding and lightning strikes. How do you prepare for a disaster, a potential disaster that you can't really pin down as to how will it exactly manifest?
Well, the one thing that is important in this is information. And we've seen that when information gets disseminated to our communities, there is a level of preparedness and communities know what to do. So we've had instances whereby people have been swept away while trying to cross flooded rivers. Even today, there are some instances that still take place, but we've seen that there's been a decline when we ramped up our communication efforts. But also, with the reality of climate change, we at times have to prepare for anything. You remember that last year, July, we were facing wildfires. In September, we faced a blizzard that had the N3, one of the most busiest routes in the country, closed down for a couple of days. Yeah. So the climate change is there, but I think the good thing that we're seeing is that the MEC is committed to working closely with stakeholders to ensure that there is transparency, accountability, and that all stakeholders play an active role in ensuring that our communities are protected and that government resources are supplemented by resources that are available from the private sector and from our social partners.
And what's the conversation about the mobility of those resources? So, for instance, the rescue resources. Did you take any lessons from that incident, that blizzard that you allude to, that occurred in September last year, that had the N3 closed down? Because part of the challenge then became, yes, you have the resources, yes, you want to reach people and rescue them, but reaching over such a vast distance became the challenge. What lessons did you draw from that, and are you incorporating those even as you prepare for any eventuality this time around?
Yes, what the MEC has done in effect, Thulasizwe, just last year, October, November, the MEC signed an MOU with a number of stakeholders. This includes line function departments, this includes social partners, NGOs, but most importantly as well, this includes your institutions such as SANRAL that is responsible for a number of major roads across the province. But the aim right now, Thulasizwe, is to ensure that all of these stakeholders are meeting consistently through the Provincial Disaster Management Center, which coordinates the provincial JOC, which is the Joint Operations Committee, which ensures that all disaster plans are in place to deal with any eventuality in whatever season that we're in. Like right now, we're going towards winter. We know that the temperatures are going to be chilly. We know that there's snow that might be facing the province during this period. We know also that the risk of wildfires. So we've got now capacity to respond, whether it be through the deployment of aerial support to put out fires. This was part of the interventions that were signed when the MEC signed the MOU with our social partners last year, November.
Lastly, then, Senzelwe, what's the call to action to communities? Everyone has heard the weather warnings. We've broadcast them on this channel, but also other platforms as well, amplifying just the warnings that have been issued by the Weather Service. As people see the weather changing outside, what's the smart thing to do to the best of people's abilities, factoring in that some people have no option but to venture outside? But what is your advice?
Well, I think the first priority is to stay informed and utilize platforms such as this station, SAFM, to stay alert at all times about the weather conditions. But also, I think one of the things that is important is that water can be very deceptive, especially if you're driving. You think that you can just get through this low-lying bridge that is flooded. The warning to communities or to residents is that we should not take risks with our lives. Let's ensure that we are aware of our surroundings all the time and take the necessary evasive actions should we have to. But also, I think the important thing to Thulasizwe is that the building of homes in areas that are prone and unsafe, I think that is something that we have to really step away from largely because this is dangerous. But also, the NBC on this front is engaging directly with Vukosi within the province to ensure that in the Makosi, ensure that they place communities or people in areas that are deemed safe by municipalities. So there's an ongoing conversation that is taking place.
All right. Thank you for that. That's Senzelwe Mzila, who is the spokesperson for the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in KwaZulu-Natal.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Yeah, while we line up your calls, let me start with one or two voice notes. Let me take this one. Earlier on, we had a conversation about the Department of Public Service and Administration and their efforts to try and consolidate their data about foreign nationals who are employed within the civil service.
Morning, SFM and listeners. This government is not for the people, it's for themselves. And then it must be removed totally in the next national elections. Now they are concerned now that there are a lot of foreign nationals working in the public sector. Private sector has been complaining about the influx of foreigners, but government was mum, no action, just bluffing people. This is not on.
Yeah.
Sunday Vice in Cape Town. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think part of the responsibility, of course, is dictated by the law that specifically talks about the circumstances under which foreign nationals can be employed within the public service. So it's a specific conversation that says, it's not wide open. It's only citizens and people who hold permanent residence. And then those who are on work visas plug in terms of the skills shortages within the economy. But it seems from the conversation we had earlier on that the department is just worried that their information may not be as consolidated and as tight as they would want it to be. And then earlier on, right at the start of the show, we told you about the situation in Gaza and the growing concern of international players, including countries that are allies, traditional allies of Israel.
Good morning, Thulasizwe, Vincent Smati and Midrand. Thulas, I think that when it comes to the conflict in Gaza, the world has been silent for far too long. And it is only now that they're waking up to the realization that so many lives and so much destruction have taken place in Gaza. Even the papacy, as the most influential religious office in the world, has been silent on this issue for some time. I think it's time that the world stood together and end this genocide. Thank you.
Yeah.
Vincent here in Midrand.
No, Vincent, thank you for that. I mean, just listening to the voices that are now amplifying, you do get a sense that we are in a particular moment, a moment of decision, in as far as the attitude of various players from all corners, really, of the globe, be it to the east, to the west, and as I say, including countries that have traditionally aligned themselves with Israel, and also those that have said Israel has the right to defend itself when attacked. But a lot of them now saying that the response in this particular instance has been disproportionate. That's at least the position of the leaders of the UK, France and Canada in that really strong joint statement that they issued earlier on. I'm coming back with your calls in just a moment.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, Joburg. First up, Mike 1 between Parktown and Santons up to Greyston Drive, very slow going. The N3 has a couple of issues, a breakdown at Heldene, so delays from Elands, and then a crash just after Galuli's at Linksfield, so delays coming up from Bedfordview to Edenvale, and then through Alex up into Buccleuch. That's all quite busy. A broken down vehicle at the top of the N3 at Buccleuch interchange. R21 away from the airport, roadworks going up to the Benoni exit, slow go traffic there. Crash after Olifantsfontein, still causing some backlogging as you head up from Clayville in towards sort of St George's Hotel territory. Durban M7 truck crash at the Belleville Road exit, traffic slow from the N2 as you make your way up in towards the Queensborough area. The rest of Durban easing up. Rain continues though. I think we're looking at easing as the volumes tend to just back off a little bit after this morning's rush hour. And Cape Town heavier this morning than during yesterday's big rain. It's still a bit sort of on off the rain around Cape Town. Certainly wet weather conditions at the moment. And the big queues that we got there, the N1 inbound, Plattercliff to the elevated freeway, CBD, that's busy all the way through. N7, Goodwood to Bosmansdam stays heavy. Marine Drive, Tableview to Sunset Beach is all clogged up. And the M3 going south remains closed between, effectively, Travato Link Road and Constantia Main. That's a multi-vehicle pileup. There's a heavy backlog from Bishop's Court, lining up on the highway and then off at Travato, round the sort of local routes through Wynberg, all congested as you aim to come back on at Constantia. And there's just been a breakdown on the M5 north at the N2, so quite heavy coming out through Rondebosch on that M5 northbound track. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
TUT ladies are on a humongous mission to play their hearts out, but Masandawana ladies believe they are unstoppable. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Do not miss out on the glittering action of Mzansi's women's football. TUT Ladies FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns Ladies FC on Sunday 25 May at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC One and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game. What if you open your night to culture? Try new things and make space for new voices, new stories, and new perspectives. Open up your Saturday night with world-class entertainment, reality TV, and drama from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Yeah, let's squeeze in as many of your calls as possible. So if you don't mind, short and sharp and direct to the point. The greetings and the niceties, I don't mind if you don't extend those to me. So let's start with Peter in Rosebank. Good morning. Please go ahead.
Morning. I just want to comment on an interview last night on ENCA from Annika Larson with Ronald Lamola.
Mm-hmm.
I was quite optimistic initially that our El Presidente Ramaphosa was going to really turn the key and do the trick in Washington because he is a good negotiator. We know that. Ramola opened his mouth and blew us away. He said everything non-negotiable. Starlink, no, we have transformation. We have BE. That's it. No more discussion. We have confiscation of land without compensation. It's in our Constitution. We're not going to change that. He should have gone over there and said, we're very prepared to open up an embassy in Israel again and start negotiations and be close to the foes over there, Israel and the Palestinians. That war is wrong. The criminal case court, I think, is a good thing for South Africa to do, but we should be closer to the fight. He should have gone over there, Ramola, and said, everything's on the table. We're negotiable. We're here to negotiate. We're here to make a plan. We're here to make a deal like Mr. Trump does. Instead, he said, everything is same old ANC bull, and it is a bad thing that he's over there. I hope he
Peter, do you believe being open to negotiation should entail changing our fundamental laws? There are principles that we've entrenched in our Constitution that we've translated into laws, but they have their foundation in our Constitution. Transformation, for example, is one of them that is founded in our Constitution. The Starlink issue, at the last check, I don't know what it is now. At the last check, it was said that there had not even been an application for Starlink to be licensed in South Africa. So which country would be willing to bend over an issue where there's not even been an application?
I think he probably hasn't applied because he's had such bad press. And he said right from the outset, from the get-go, Elon Musk said, I'm not going to give 30% of my company to as a payment for your past injustices. That's nothing to do with him. He's an American. He's an investor. He doesn't want to have a 30% tax on his investment. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. No one's going to invest under those circumstances. Ramola should have said everything's negotiable. That's a good way. That's a good start. Don't get into the intricacies of our Constitution and what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do, because then Trump will get into the intricacies of his Constitution and in what it says in his Constitution, and he will use that to our detriment.
Peter, thank you for that. I've got to move on. That's Peter in Rosebank. Let me see if Churchill agrees with you. Good morning to you, Churchill. Please, straight ahead. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Thulas. Thulas, the main question that I've always been asking here is how did you get to this point? Who has actually initiated this visit? Because there's a lot of speculation. Knowing the personality of Donald Trump, he always wants to get, he's a very selfish person. So we would love to know, then that's when we'll be able to analyze who has initiated this one.
Yeah. All right. So that's the
because
point.
There's a lot of speculation.
That's your point of curiosity this morning, Churchill.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's Churchill. Let's see if Dario knows who has been instrumental in orchestrating it all. Because until now, these two presidents have been engaging via phone call, and now they're meeting face to face. Some in the reporting, News 24 in particular, saying that Johan Rupert may have been instrumental. And Dario, you want to weigh in on Johan Rupert? Good morning.
Morning, Dario from Bloemfontein. So, yeah, what I wanted to say is that, it's surprising that, you hear that, Johan Rupert could be there in the envoy or could have orchestrated this because, I hear that some people might have laughed at the fact that, the guy is there. My concern is this, there was no such, attitude when the Guptas were sort of running the country, so to speak, because it is clear that, Rupert is having some major input. And he's not an industrialist, he's just an investor. You know that also the DA is there in some ministers. So you wonder who is running this country, right? And that was really my concern, that, there was no same level of sort of understanding who is there and who's not there.
Yeah.
I think it's plainly wrong that we hear, who is there and who organizes these things. But thank you. That was my point.
All right. Thank you for that, Dario. Peggy in Mpumalanga, short and sharp for me, please. You are my last caller.
I wish to revive the spirit of Samora Machel, Robert Mugabe, Fidel Castro, Saddam Hussein. If I could resurrect them, I would have said to the South Africans, go and acquire wisdom as to how to deal with the situation. I thank you.
What do you mean by that? You can explain it to me briefly.
Okay, because you said I must be sharp and short. I mean that the question is that why are we begging so much to Americans when we know that they actually have caused so much atrocity? And what is their mission and their intention? We cannot change our constitution of South Africa just to suit America. They failed to support us during the time of need. When we asked them, when there were sanctions, they didn't assist us.
Yeah.
And the leaders that I'm speaking about did assist South Africa with resources.
All right.
And now here we go back to them simply because 45 people or families went to their country. And then we are shivering. We've got bricks. That is the point that I want to make.
Peggy, thank you for that. That's Peggy in Mpumalanga. And that's it, really. With the full respect and credit to the legendary Jim Clancy, I'm Thulasizwe Simelane, and you've been briefed. Stay tuned for more talk, current affairs, and news programming here on SAFM, starting with the Talking Point with Kethi Mohlahlana immediately after the news.
In our top stories, unions want Godongwana to move away from austerity in his budget and President Ramaphosa's high-stakes meeting with Trump. Good morning. Workers are hoping the revised budget to be tabled today will be more people-centred and push for economic growth and job creation. Labour Union federations COSATU, FEDUSA and SAFTU have urged the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to move away from austerity measures introduced in previous budgets. The country's worsening unemployment figures have also raised concerns, with some unions saying it's a point of crisis in the country. COSATU's Parliament spokesperson Matthew Parks says the lack of sufficient allocations in 2025 has left many workers anxious.
The budget needs to speak to our economic crisis. We've had 1% economic growth for the past 15 years. We have an unemployment rate of 43.1%, entrenched levels of poverty, inequality, of crime and corruption. We have the state, from public service departments to municipalities to state-owned enterprises, really struggling. So we really need to have the budget speak to those issues.
Meanwhile, students at Letaba TVET College in Giyani, Limpopo wants the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's budget speech to resolve challenges with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS. Many NSFAS-funded students across the country are facing challenges of non-payment by the financial scheme. Some students are also facing evictions from landlords. One of the students, Tabiso Mavasa, says she hopes the minister will increase government's allocation to NSFAS.
I just want the minister to change the struggle of NSFAS, because even now we're not going to school. We are struggling.
Some ANC members in the Peter Mokaba region in Limpopo have filed an urgent application to interdict the regional elective conference at the Polokwane High Court. In their court papers, they state the party's regional elective conference must not take place until all disputes are resolved. The elective regional conference, which was previously postponed twice, is planned to start at the new Peter Mokaba Stadium today. Michael Makungo reports.
The 5 parties members from various branches want the High Court to stop the conference to allow finalization of all disputes. They stated that in the event that the conference is convened and voting has taken place be declared null and void, the matter has been sent to be heard at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
The NPA has confirmed the inquest into the deaths of the Cradock Four will go ahead early next month. Various role players, including the NPA and police, appeared before Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Justice and Constitutional Development. They briefed the committee on the implementation of the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The Cradock Four were anti-apartheid activists. They were abducted and murdered by the South African Security Police in June of 1985. The inquest into the death of the 4 men was previously postponed due to delays in funding. The Eastern Cape NPA head Berry Madolo assured MPs the inquest will start on the 2nd of June.
I just want to confirm that on the 2nd, the Cradock 4 inquest in all is going to proceed. There has been a general agreement that we're going to proceed, though there is no direction yet regarding the funding of SANDF. But we have contingency plans. We'll proceed at least for 10 days during June.
And finally, President Cyril Ramaphosa and the U.S. President Donald Trump will today meet in a historic engagement since Trump returned to the White House in January. They expected to discuss a number of issues, including trade, bilateral relations and other matters between Pretoria and Washington. International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola and other ministers are also part of the visit. Lamola says President Ramaphosa is aware of the task ahead.
The President is acutely aware of that and is upbeat. He's ready. For us, it's about the reset of the strategic relationship between the two countries, which are very important. I mean, it's our second biggest trading partner. We are their number one trading partner in the continent. So there is a need for us to reset the relations.
Recapping the top story, workers are hoping the revised budget to be tabled today will be more people-centred and push for economic growth and job creation. Labour Union Federations, COSATU, FEDUSA and SAFTU have urged the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to move away from austerity measures introduced in previous budgets. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Do you want to study towards a tertiary qualification but need a flexible study schedule? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning qualifications offer just that. Our distance learning support is designed for your success. 2025 applications to Stadio's range of high-quality, affordable qualifications are now open. Distance learning qualifications are available in law, administration and management, commerce, teacher education, policing, law enforcement, humanities, and information technology. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
Some crimes fade with time, but the truth, it never stays buried. From the makers of critically acclaimed drama comes Unforgotten Season 3. Detectives Cassie Stewart and Sunny Khan return to unravel another cold case. A missing boy, a hidden body, and secrets that refuse to die. When the past resurfaces, lives will change forever. Unforgotten Season 3, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Because justice has no expiration date.
The Red Devils want to wrap up the season with maximum points at Old Trafford.
Into the box, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And Mason Mount strikes again. Brilliant stuff from Manchester United.
While the Villains want to conclude their good race with a victory.
Rodgers turns and sees the knee ball into an Ollie Watkins, and he's touched it home. Ollie Watkins breaks the record. Number 75 for Watkins.
This is the bottom half versus top half Premier League clash. Catch Manchester United FC versus Aston Villa FC on Sunday 25 May at 4:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the